Justice League Unlimited. Probably the second most talked about show in the DCAU, with Batman the Animated Series being the obvious number one. But with Justice League Unlimited being talked about more than Justice League, I really want to sit down and find out why Justice League Unlimited is talked about so much by watching every single episode and ranking them from worst to best. If you haven't seen my other 4 videos where I sit down and rank every single episode of a certain DCAU show, which I know I haven't talked about Static Shock or the Zeta Project. But I honestly didn't think many people would be interested in that. Hey look, if you're interested in it, let me know in the comments. But what I do is I go through every single episode of a show, talking about what happens in each episode, and then giving my opinions about the episode. After I finish all the episodes, I rank them from worst to best. I start with ranking every single episode in a season, and then by the time I finish the whole show, I rank it as a whole. Before I get into talking about every episode in this show, you know what's better than a big team of DC superheroes? Supporting my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to new videos, and also get a cool little Discord role on my Discord server. The benefits get better from there with my $5 and $10 tiers giving you all some really cool benefits such as frequent video updates and even shoutouts at the end of my videos. Anyway, let's finish off the DCAU by starting off Justice League Unlimited with the episode. The first episode of Justice League Unlimited starts with robbers robbing a convenience store. Whilst robbing the store, a worker pulls the alarm, and as one of the robbers has the worker at gunpoint, Green Arrow himself comes out and puts a stop to them. He manages to stop most of them, but GL comes out to stop the last guy as he's about to shoot Green Arrow. Hold up, he looks a bit different. Decided to shave his head, give himself a little buzz cut, and then keep a beard. I don't know how I feel about that. GL mentions to him that the League's been trying to contact him, and as they're talking, GL manages to teleport them both to the new and improved Watchtower. When they arrive, he meets the original League's members besides Hawkgirl, since she's still gone, but also sees the many new recruits, and damn, there's quite a lot of them. We then get the absolutely kick-ass intro for the show, and hot damn, it's surprisingly better than Justice League's intro. I know it also compiles clips of the episode we're about to watch, which is a positive and a negative, and I'll bring it up when it becomes a negative. Besides that, the music this time around is even better. It really works well with getting you pumped to see what happens in the episode. Speaking about the episode, we get back to it as Superman's giving the League a speech about how they're all different but they're also equal in at least one way. That way is that they're willing to make the sacrifices that a hero needs to make. He mentions that the League can do a lot more good now since they're a much bigger team, but they also need to be organised. And to do that, Jean's the one keeping an eye on everything and even sending the heroes on their missions. Hold the phone for 1 second. Is that the Creeper in the Watchtower? I guess now he's just a superhero, even though he was kind of a villain in the new Batman Adventures, but okay. As Superman's giving his speech, Batman talks to Green Arrow where he mentions that he doesn't belong up here and is just looking after the little guy, where Batman makes a very good point.
Those monsters you don't fight, they tend to step on little guys.
We then go to Jean with GL as they detect some kind of nuclear accident, where Jean tells GL to take Captain Atom and Supergirl with him. So GL leaves with the two, and as they do, Green Arrow asks GL to take him back off the Watchtower, where he ends up saying that he'll drop him off after the mission. They all get on the Javelin and arrive where the supposed nuclear accident happened, where the whole forest is destroyed. When they rock up, soldiers shoot at them, where GL manages to disarm them all, and when he does, General Kwan, at least it isn't this Kwan, arrives where he apologizes for shooting at them. They end up chatting as the General says that the nuclear accident's completely under control, and that they don't need their help. Later that night, GL talks to Jean about what happened, where he mentions that they definitely don't have it under control since it seems to be getting worse. Green Arrow comes out to tell him that they obviously didn't want them to find out about the accident, but GL makes him stop talking since it isn't his concern, but brings up to Jean that he makes a good point. They end up deciding that they can't do anything about it, but as they do, Green Arrow disappears, where we see him find a bunch of military vehicles escorting civilians away. A vehicle behind them accidentally swerves off the bridge, but Green Arrow manages to save the soldier driving the truck, and when he goes, General Kwan gets shitty at him since he said that the situation is under control. When he says that, we see a giant fire robot come out where it ends up destroying the bridge as Green Arrow goes towards it to try and stop the robot. As he tries to stop it, the other heroes catch up to help Green Arrow out, with Supergirl and Captain Atom dealing with the robot as GL and Green Arrow save the civilians. Eventually, both Supergirl and Captain Atom get their asses handed to them, as the robot then manages to blast GL with its energy beam and knock him out where the robot gets away. They end up taking GL back to the Javelin as they let him rest, but they decide to get back out there and try to stop the giant robot. When they go back out, they end up getting the information out of some men checking the radiation levels, as they find out that the robot was meant to protect them, but they lost control of it. The men tell them that the robot's reactor is located on its upper torso, and the way to defeat it is by destroying the reactor with the carbon rods that the army has on hand with them. So they end up finding the robot again as Captain Atom's willing to sacrifice himself to destroy the robot, since the heat could possibly kill him when being that close to the robot. Captain Atom then gets Supergirl to distract the robot to give him time to get close enough to it, where he fails, and as he does, his suit rips where he decides to go up into the sky before he explodes? Or is it just like energy that he can't control when his suit's compromised? I really don't know. Because of that, Supergirl tries to do it but fails, where Green Arrow manages to shoot one of the rods right at the reactor, but the robot shuts off and Supergirl punches its head off. After that, they get back to the Watchtower as Captain Atom's being restored. GL then mentions to Supergirl that she's too headstrong, and if she jeopardizes herself or her teammates again by not having a plan, she will get kicked out of the league. As he's leaving though, he mentions that she did good, where we then end the episode with Green Arrow talking to Batman, where he says he still feels like he doesn't belong here, but Batman says that's a good thing since someone like him can keep them all honest. Whilst Green Arrow is talking, he sees Black Canary, where he then says to Batman that he might see him soon. You know what? This episode's solid. It isn't amazing or anything, but I think it works with what it's trying to do. It works at establishing that this is a new version of the League, as they now have a much bigger team of heroes to help. It was smart to do that by just starting with one of the original members teaming up with some of the new recruits, so we can ease ourselves into getting to know all the new members of the League over the course of this show. I do have one problem though. I do wish we got to see a bit more development between Starcrossed and here, because there's a big chunk of information missing there, and there is storytelling potential in between Starcrossed and what we're currently seeing. It's just a big jump going from the end of Starcrossed, where the League's members have to rebuild the Justice League, to this, where the League's honestly stronger than it's ever been, since there's so many heroes in the Justice League now. With that aside though, it will definitely be interesting to see many new heroes pop up in the show, and even some characters that we've seen in small quantities before, such as Supergirl, Aquaman, Dr. Fate, and a few others. Shit, even Steel's in the Justice League now, which I'm all for because I like Steel, not the movie. One thing about this episode is that it was pretty predictable what was going to happen since the army was suspicious from the word go. And the twist of this episode where they built the robot to protect themselves was so obvious you could see it a mile away. The good thing though is that the episode doesn't really focus on that. It mainly focuses on how the members interact with one another and how they deal with a big threat like this. But let's get into the next episode, and oh boy, I'm looking forward to this one. Shit, I can't believe we're at the second episode of this show and we're already at one of my favourites. Let's give it a watch. We start this off with Batman and Wonder Woman arriving at the Fortress of Solitude as they're going to give Superman their gifts for his birthday. Batman asks what she got for him, but she doesn't want to spoil the surprise, where Batman reveals that he's giving him cash, and of course he is. But anyways, they see Superman and find out that he has some kind of alien parasite wrapped around him. Holy shit. But yes, this is adapting that Alan Moore Superman story, which funny enough about that, this is the only Alan Moore adaptation that Alan Moore actually likes. We then get the typical intro to the show, but the one thing that annoys me is that it spoils who gave Superman the parasite in the clips of the episode shown in the intro. To not do the same as the show's intro, I'm only going to mention who it is when they show up in the episode. So Batman finds out that the alien thing is actually a plant, as it seems to be growing itself into Superman, where Wonder Woman goes to hopefully find the intruder that put the plant on Superman. We then see what Superman's seeing, as he seems to be back on Krypton where he's woken up on his birthday, as we find out that he's actually a farmer on Krypton. He gets up out of bed to see that his partner is literally a mix of Lois Lane and Lana Lang, called Luana, where she looks like Lois, is also a reporter, and even has the same voice actress Dana Delaney, but has Lana's red hair. After they talk for a little, their house starts to shake, but it stops in a few seconds where we go back to Batman as he finds out that the plant was a gift for Superman. As he finds that out, we hear a certain voice from the worst two episodes in the previous show, and yes, it's revealed to be Mongul as he has Wonder Woman knocked out in one of his hands. But yeah, the intro of this episode already revealed that it's Mongul that shows up, which is honestly really annoying. Also, I assume that Dragar couldn't hold the throne because how was Mongul back with the crown at his head? So Mongul comes out and says that he'll take out the planet, as Wonder Woman wakes up and is about to fight Mongul, where Batman stops her. The only reason why is because he wants to know about the plant, where Mongul explains that it's called the Black Mercy, where it shows you your deepest desires. As he shit talks Superman, Wonder Woman tries to fight him, but we go back to Clark's dream as he makes breakfast for Luana and his son named Van. His son accidentally spoils that he's getting a surprise birthday party at Zod's that night, where we go back to Wonder Woman and Batman fighting Mongul. They get their asses handed to them, but as Wonder Woman's fighting Mongul, Batman tries to get Superman out of the plant's control. He isn't having much luck, and neither is Wonder Woman, as we go back to Clark's dream where they catch up with Jor-El, as another earthquake happens where Brainiac says that it was just another small tremor. Wonder Woman's still getting her ass handed to her, as Clark visits her father in a lab where we see the same plant that's currently attached to him in the lab as he talks to his father. He mentions that something's wrong with the tremors, but Jor-El decides to be a bit of a smartass since he thinks that the tremors are no big deal. He then mentions that he accidentally thought that Krypton was going to explode when Kal-El was a few days old, and that it took him years to salvage his reputation. They stop their conversation since Van overhears them, where Kal-El decides to take him to the telescopes on the roof, as we then see that Clark's actually managing to fight against the plant. Both of them get to the roof where he starts to hear Batman talking to him, and here we go. This is the scene that can make anyone tear up.
But I don't think you're real. I don't think any of this is real. This is everything I ever wanted in a life. But I've got responsibilities, Van. And I have to go now.
This scene alone's a masterpiece. Like, what else is there to say about it? But the planet starts to blow up where he promises Van that he'll never forget, but the planet lets go of Superman. When it does though, it latches itself onto Batman, and when it does, we see his fantasy as his father Thomas manages to stop the man that killed his parents and beats him up. Whilst that's going on, Superman becomes conscious again and goes to stop Mongul before he kills Wonder Woman, where he kicks the shit out of him, and damn, this is satisfying. Mongul ends up getting the upper hand though, but Superman uses his laser vision to stop him, where Wonder Woman manages to get to Batman and get the plan off him. When she does, she struggles with the plan, but as Superman's about to be killed by Mongul, Wonder Woman manages to put the plan on Mongul. The episode then ends as the three of them are wondering what Mongul's seeing. Yeah, this episode is as good as I remember it being. It's a fantastic story on its own, where Superman gets given everything he ever wanted, but even when being given the life he ever wanted, he would rather not live in a fantasy world. It's actually similar to the episode Perchance the Dream from Batman the Animated Series, where the characters are put into their idea of a perfect world. It really just shows how Clark would love to live his life as a farmer with a wife and kid, but to see him have to reject it all in the end is honestly very emotional and fantastic. It's just so well done, and I can only say that so many times. I'm not joking, I wonder if any episode in this show will be better or as good as this episode. Okay, before I get into the episode itself, I really like how this show has a lot of singular episodes instead of so many two-parters. The only two-parter in this series is the last 2 episodes of this season. Besides from that, they're all singular episodes, which is a big surprise since Justice League was all 2 and 3-parters, aside from 1 episode, Comfort and Joy. Anyways, we start kids stuff with Morgaine and her son Mordred, as they steal some magic amulet from a statue, and when they do, Mordred decides to keep it for himself instead of giving it to his mother. When he does, he transforms and makes everyone older than him disappear, as we see every adult just vanish into thin air, and whilst that's going on, the League are fighting some villains in a bank vault. They defeat the villains, and when they do, GL tries to protect them from the wave with his ring, but fails and vanishes into thin air. We then see where the League ends up as all the adults are in some kind of other realm, as Morgaine tells them that her son caused all this. She mentions that they need to work together to stop him, otherwise he'll just rule the world full of children, and when she says that, she puts a spell on the League to make them kids again, which seems to make them go back to Earth. Back on Earth though, we see Mordred turn the world into the way he wants it to be, as the League members arrive as kids. When they arrive, they quickly move to confront Mordred, where he turns some kids' toys into giant robots to fight the League. The League manages to destroy the robots quite easily, and as they go after Mordred, they get frozen and thrown into a cave, where they have to face off against Baby Etrigan. They try to make him calm down, but Wonder Woman's the one that manages to make him calm down, as they then find their way out of there. We then see the kids having fun again whilst Mordred goes back to his castle, as the League gets out and manages to make the kids leave, whilst they try to stop Mordred again. They see that Mordred's asleep, as the League comes up with a plan to sneak up to him and steal the amulet away from him, and as they're going through with their plan, a kid accidentally blows their cover. So Mordred wakes up where he decides to make himself grow, where he tries to stop the League as they're getting away. He even makes some dragon statues come to life and try and stop them, where the League manages to destroy the statues and face off against Mordred again. GL and Mordred face off for a little while, as the League gets the amulet where Etrigan manages to destroy it as he tries to eat it. Mordred still has the power though, since he apparently absorbed most of its power, but as he captures the League, they manage to make himself turn older, where he vanishes into the other realm. Everything goes back to normal where everyone comes back, where Morgaine turns the League's members back into adults. As she's leaving, Batman asks what happened to Mordred, as she explains that Mordred just has eternal life, since he broke the Eternal Youth spell she put on him. The episode then ends with Morgaine taking care of Mordred, where he basically looks dead since he's extremely old. This episode's alright. Honestly, the weakest episode so far, since Mordred's honestly such a weak villain and not interesting at all. He's honestly quite annoying, but the best part about this episode is seeing how the League would act like if they were kids again. Still isn't great, as I've said before, but to be honest, it's probably the worst episode. It's not bad at all, but it just gets boring to watch. Hawk and Dove starts with a man in a cave forging a chess piece, where another man voiced by Michael York tells him to have the suit ready. Michael York again? It's so weird hearing him back in this universe after Superman the Animated Series. The other man says it will be ready, where he shows him the full suit as he completes it, and oh shit, that's Edward Asner. You know, Santa from the movie Elf? Also, he voices Granny Goodness in Superman the Animated Series. Anywho, we find out that Michael York's character is meant to be Ares, as he uses magic to give the suit life, and he says that he'll take it. We then go to a war as the men try to stop the suit from killing them all, as they fail, where Ares is selling the suit to some person and manages to make a deal with them as they take the suit. After that, we see men driving away after robbing a bank, where Diana manages to stop the two, where she seems shitty since she wanted to take the day off for once. She's gonna beat one of them to a pulp where Jean makes her stop, as she then suits up and goes to the invisible jet as Jean talks to her about her behaviour. She gets a little shitty, but Jean sends her on a job as we see two men called Hawk and Dove suit up since they're about to get into a bar fight. They manage to take the other men out, and as they have the last guy, Wonder Woman arrives as she says that they didn't answer them, and tells them to come with her now. When they do, we go to the Kaznian army as they discuss that the opposition are planning a new kind of weapon, as they say that they need to attack as soon as possible, where they all roll out to attack them. As they leave, the old man telling them that information transforms into Ares, as we start to get the idea that he just wants to rally people up to fight and cause war with one another. Well, Ares is the god of war, so it makes sense. Wonder Woman, Hawk and Dove arrive in Kaznia, as is the giant battlefield, where they have to come in and stop the suit from destroying the army. Wonder Woman and Hawk fight it as Dove tries to get the people away, while the two of them get their asses handed to them. They end up fleeing as Wonder Woman realizes that something's up with the suit, as she goes to try and question someone about it, whilst Hawk and Dove try to save the army. As that's going on, Ares gets shitty with the man that he sold the suit to, since he backed off in the battle where they should have marched forward. The man tells him to leave, where Ares reveals himself, as he says that he will stay and the man will leave. We then go to Wonder Woman as she finds a blacksmith and questions him about the suit. She finds out that Ares made him build the suit, and that there's a weakness to the suit, but she doesn't find out what that weakness is. She leaves as we then see Dove find Ares, where they fight for a bit, and whilst they're fighting, Hawk tries to kidnap the general, but has to flee after the army's alerted. Hawk sees Dove strapped to the suit where he manages to free him, and on the battlefield we even see Ares running around fucking shit up as well. Wonder Woman comes in to help as well, where they try to stop the armies from fighting each other, whilst also trying to stop the suit and Ares. Wonder Woman figures out that the suit's fueled by their rage, as they manage to make it stop after making soldiers put their weapons down. Ares gets mad since his plans have obviously been stopped, where he says that he'll be back sooner than they think. This is a good episode. Honestly, the best part about it in my opinion is seeing that the solution to defeating Ares and stopping his plan is by making everyone stop fighting, since him and the suit feed on the war and rage going on. Besides that, at least Ares isn't Nigel Thornberry like in the Wonder Woman movie.
That was smashing!
And also, Hawk and Dove are alright characters. It's kind of an interesting dynamic to have a duo of heroes where one of them's more hot-headed and the other one's a lot more passive and peaceful. I just don't really have much else to say about this episode, it's alright. So it goes above kids stuff, but below initiation. This episode starts with Wonder Woman and Batman waiting for some criminals to make their move, as Wonder Woman wishes that she could be down there having some fun. She's obviously hinting towards doing something with Bruce outside of work, but honestly, after the events of Justice League, Batman makes an excellent point.
1. Dating within the team always leads to disaster.
As they're chatting though, someone tries to break into a bank, where they reveal themselves to be Cersei, where she uses some magic to beat her enemies. She managed to get let out of the pits of Tartarus, where she's known for turning people into animals, where she puts a spell on Wonder Woman. We then go to Zatanna, she's doing a magic show, and when she finishes the show and goes backstage, Batman approaches her asking for her help. Batman shows Zatanna that Wonder Woman got turned into a pig, where Zatanna tries to use spells to turn her back, but nothing works. Zatanna suggests that they try and get one of the other magicians on the league to help, but Batman says no, where she figures out that Wonder Woman and him have something more than a friendship going on, where she agrees to help. We then see Cersei as she's singing a number with some backup dancers, as Zatanna and Batman talk to a magic shop owner to help get a locator spell to find Cersei. The spell doesn't work as Wonder Woman manages to get loose and make a run for it, where they end up running into Buana Beast, as Batman called for his help to find the pig since he's good at locating animals. Buana Beast ends up finding the pig, but it manages to make its way into a slaughterhouse where he has to find it again since there's so many pigs in there. Batman and Zatanna end up talking to Medusa as they find out that she wanted a headline at the amphitheater, where they now know that she'd probably be there. We go back to Buana Beast as we see the pig trying to get away from the slaughterhouse, as one of the workers ends up trying to shoot it after just trying to grab it. Zatanna and Batman manage to make it to the theater, and I actually quite like this joke.
Insolent trickster, you dare to strike. Oh, you dare to strike. Ow! You dare to strike. Ow! Quit it! Oh no!
But as they arrive, Cersei turns the men watching into different animals as they attack the two. We then go back to the pig as a few other workers manage to get it and tie it up, where it's thrown onto the conveyor belt. As Batman and Zatanna are fighting the animals, Batman ends up asking what he has to give up to reverse the spell on Wonder Woman. Cersei says that she wants something precious of his and that he worked hard on, and won't be able to get back, where we get to see Batman singing Am I Blue. And I gotta say, Kevin Conroy has a great singing voice. I would play the whole thing if I could, but copyright's a bitch. Not for the song, for the footage of the episode. As Batman's singing, we go back to Wonder Woman as the spell's reversed, but she goes to find Cersei. Batman then finishes singing as he explains that Batman spent a month on stakeout to learn how to sing that song like that, where he also says thanks to Zatanna for helping him. The episode then ends at the Watchtower with Wonder Woman and Batman talking, and she says that she doesn't remember much, but as she walks off she starts to hum the song, and I love when Batman does these goofy expressions. It's so rare that it's honestly great, but as the whole episode goes, it is good. It's just an episode that really develops Wonder Woman and Batman's relationship, and as I said in my Justice League video, I surprisingly like their relationship. It's an interesting pairing, but it just works for me. But I also gotta say that seeing Zatanna pop up in an episode is a big surprise, since we literally haven't seen her since Batman the Animated Series. Cersei isn't that interesting though, but I don't think she's the main focus. It's mainly just meant to focus on what Batman would do to help Wonder Woman, since she means a lot to him, and it works at doing that. This goes above Initiation, but below for the man who has everything. Fearful Symmetry starts with Supergirl stopping some man, but she ends up getting attacked by other people with guns on the roof as she takes them out. When she does, she goes back for the man, but gets caught up by some CGI robot as she destroys it, and then kills the man with her laser vision. Kara wakes up from her nightmare as she accidentally lasered the roof, where we then go to Jean talking to her at the Watchtower. Jean mentions that they don't seem to be dreams, but they aren't sure if she actually did those things or not, where Jean tells her to take a few days off. She then asks Green Arrow for help, and when he says yes, the question comes up and says that it could possibly be a repressed memory. Fuck yeah, I love the question. He's basically this universe's Rorschach, but not as violent. He mentions that something may have happened at Star Labs that made her do those things that she doesn't remember doing, where he figures out that she may be a part of a giant conspiracy. The question says that he's going to go help them, where Supergirl goes to Professor Hamilton, where he explains that she was on life support the whole time after the Legacy two-parter, on the same bench we saw in the episode. They end up explaining the device in her dream, where Hamilton shows them that he has a device similar to it, where it ends up being the exact same one, but it's meant to be a surgical robot, not a torture device. Hamilton explains that the robot saved her life, and that maybe she couldn't handle surgery and came up with a scenario in her head. So as they leave, the question thinks that everything's been answered too well, where 2 helicopters come out and fight them, and even a Zeta prototype. They manage to take them down as one of the helicopters get away, where Supergirl starts to agree with the question, since it's pretty suspicious that they got attacked right after they asked questions. The question also finds it suspicious that they use the League's trainer robots, since someone that supplied the robots probably tried to attack them. So from there, they end up questioning the owner, as he ends up getting pushed out after Superman invaded, since he knew way too much about what the army and the government were up to. He mentions that many different metahumans have been tested on, such as what happened with Volcana and the Royal Flush Gang, but he doesn't know anything about her dreams and if it's connected to them. He says that they can't find them, but they could find the League if they need to. But as they end up leaving, we see a woman named Tea, which is short for Galatea, which looks and sounds a lot like Supergirl as she attacks him. We go to Supergirl as she wakes up from a dream, as she knows that the man that they just spoke to is dead. As they're talking, they find out that the man from Kara's dream is missing, where they decide to split up to get more answers. We then see the question interrogate a reporter for answers, as Green Arrow and Supergirl break into Nuvotech, but the question finds out that the reporter had been seeing a girl that fits the description of Supergirl. Back at Nuvotech, Green Arrow and Supergirl find out that they've been experimenting on metahuman DNA, and even Supergirl's as they created a clone of her. They figure out that they must have some psychic link because of her dreams, and when they do, they see Tea as they try and chase after her. When they're chasing after her, they end up in a simulation room, where she comes out and explains that she's a clone of hers, but aged a few years and has more training. She explains that Supergirl has to die since she thinks that she's able to read her mind because of their psychic link, where they end up fighting. The question breaks in to help them as we see Supergirl being thrown around by Tea, and as she's about to kill Supergirl, the question starts questioning her about why she wanted to kill Supergirl. He figured out that she can get into her head, but it also works the opposite way around, as she wanted to kill Supergirl because she wasn't getting any sleep at night, as well as her knowing her secrets. It manages to give Supergirl the time to get the jump on Tea, while they start to fight again while some man in the shadows makes a giant beam come out and presumably destroy Tea as they get away. The episode then ends with the 3 of them talking, where we then see Professor Hamilton as he's helping heal Tea. I like this episode quite a lot because of the question, but as the story goes of this episode, it doesn't feel quite complete. I know that this is going to get to a much bigger plot thread later on that's going to go through several episodes, but on its own it just doesn't feel complete. It's still a good episode because I really like how the question actually seems to be quite right with his conspiracies, and there's the fact that he's a great character, but it kind of just ends without an actual conclusion. Sure, you see Hamilton helping with healing Tea, but besides that, the episode just kind of stops, and it's really strange. So this episode goes above Initiation but below this little piggy. Alright, so we start this off with Booster Gold as everyone looks at him confused since no one knows who he is. Another great character. Let's go. But Booster Gold shows him a video of who he is, with Fry from Futurama providing the voice for Skeets, where he explains that Booster Gold time traveled from the future to be a superhero. Also, is this kid dumb or something?
I thought you were Green Lantern.
Anyways, we go to the watchtower as Jean talks to Booster Gold, where he's asking for more jobs. Jean explains that his attitude for fame is keeping him away from doing jobs, but as they're talking, an alarm goes off. They find out that Batman and Wonder Woman are in trouble with the Dark Lord attacking them. They get their asses handed to them as Jean gets other members to go help him out. He even gets a second fleet ready, where Jean hesitantly lets Booster Gold go with him. We see the members rock up as Elongated Man and Booster Gold are forced to do crowd control, but they're both not happy about it. Wonder Woman comes in to say that they need Elongated Man's help, as Booster Gold's still stuck with crowd control, as he's bored out of his mind. Whilst he's stuck, he sees Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman combined into one person, which is strange, but after that a kid comes out saying that his family's stuck in a fire, where he finds out that it's just an ant family. Booster Gold gives it to the kid as he calls him Green Lantern again, and he makes the same point I made.
I'm not Green Lantern, I'm Booster Gold.
As he helps an old lady out with directions, an earthquake happens where some people are stuck in the building as he manages to find a woman. When he does, she explains that something's very wrong, where one of the professors was stuck in the explosion, and some experiment went wrong as he has a black hole stuck on him. Booster Gold tries to contact Jean to tell him what's going on, but he cuts communications with him where Booster Gold decides to help the woman on his own. She tells him that she has a device that could shut off the black hole, but you have to get it around his neck, where they then quickly find him. He tries to get it around his neck, but as he tries, things are thrown his way, and even has to help a woman give birth after the doctors got sucked up into the black hole. After he helps her, she calls him Green Lantern, where he then tries to find Tracy as she took the device, where he manages to save her as she's about to get sucked into the black hole. So Booster's about to kiss her, but Skeets interrupts them, where Booster then goes to stop him but fails after he accidentally gets hit by a train. He goes out to find the professor again as he's reaching critical mass, where a giant building robot comes out to fight Booster. He manages to make it get sucked into the portal, where Booster then goes to put the collar on him as he reaches critical mass and manages to do so as he's being sucked in. Everything is sucked up comes back out, as Booster Gold walks away when he could have kissed the girl, since he thinks that he isn't a hero. Booster then sees Batman as he says that he told him to stay on crowd control, where Booster tries to explain himself, but he says that they're going to have a chat later. We then hear a woman ask for Green Lantern, as Booster gets shitty about it, but sees that it's Tracy as she asks if they want to go out for dinner sometime. You know what? I like this episode quite a lot. Booster Gold's just an entertaining character to watch, since he's quite lighthearted and cocky, kinda like the Flash, but a bit different. I would say Booster's a bit different because he's actually starting to learn what it means to be a hero, compared to the Flash where he already knows what it means to be one. But characters like this work well in this universe, and especially focusing a whole episode on Booster Gold, it's great. Goes above Initiation, but below Fearful Symmetry. The return starts at the Watchtower as GL's talking to the Guardians, where they explain that his request to leave Earth was denied. Jean comes out and asks if they can trade duties for a while, but as they're talking they see that something's approaching Oa, as 12 Lanterns come out to stop it but get their asses kicked. We then find out that it's Amazo as he manages to completely wipe out the planet in an instant. From there we see that Amazo's gone to Earth, where Jean sets up the League's members to potentially stop him. As Superman's about to leave, he gets confused, since the last thing Amazo said was that he evolved to a point where none of them could offer him anything he wants. They don't know why he's coming back, but we then see Lex as he talks to a reporter, where he explains that he could have 30 years or 30 days left on the planet, but wants to make a positive difference before he dies. The reporter asks if he has any grudges or vendettas, even with the League, but he then says that he has none and that he may even end up being friends with them, as Supergirl and Steel come in and grab him. Damn, we haven't seen Steel in quite a while. But also he can fly now? Okay, well he didn't fly in Superman the Animated Series, but alright. Anywho, Supergirl mentions that Amazo's coming back, and that they're trying to put him someplace safe, where he tells them that he has a place where he will be safe. They take him to a barbershop where he gets taken to a secret bunker underneath the shop, as the two try to follow him, but Supergirl gets stopped by kryptonite that's stuck on the walls. We see Lex get into a secret lab where he has a giant cannon, but the Atom comes out since he was on Lex the whole time. The Atom has Amazo's blueprints, as he wants to try and find a weakness on him, but we then see the League's members outside of Earth waiting for Amazo. Amazo talks to them telepathically as Superman asks why he's coming back, where he says that he already knows the answer. He's obviously coming back for Lex, where the League tries to stop him, but as they fight we see Lex and the Atom create a device, where Jean tells him that Amazo got through the League's members. We see him get to Earth where he tries to find Lex by listening into conversations, where he ends up hearing Lex's voice. Amazo then easily runs through the next line of defense from the League, where Jean alerts the last line of defense. When he does, Dr. Fate comes out and says that he's going to give him hope. Amazo then arrives at the front of the barbershop where he annihilates the last line of defense, where Lex and the Atom are trying to slow him down as much as possible. They manage to get the cannon ready as he arrives, where it manages to do absolutely nothing against him. We then see the Lantern members help save the first line of defense, where they come up with a plan to use all their energy to kill Amazo, but it could also wipe out half the planet. As that's going on, Jean mentions that it's the only way to Dr. Fate, whilst Dr. Fate says that he's still going to try and find another way. Then we see Amazo get to Lex as the Atom shrinks Lex down into a miniature universe, where Amazo still gets to them. Amazo wonders why Lex is the way he is, since he has everything anyone could want, but he still wants more, and doesn't know what his ultimate purpose is, where Lex says that he doesn't know what purpose. As that's going on, the Lantern members go to stop Amazo, but Dr. Fate stops them for a moment, where he eventually gets out of their way after John threatens him. They can't find Amazo, but Dr. Fate explains that Lex is saving the world, where we see Lex give him a speech as to why he shouldn't destroy him and everything, because he should want to see the end. Lex explains that his purpose is just to see what happens in the future, and that he can see it all, and we all create our own purpose, and that he should create his. So after that, Amazo ends up bringing them back, and as the Lanterns are about to fight Amazo, Dr. Fate stops them. Dr. Fate gets Amazo to say that it's over, and as he does, he explains that he didn't destroy Oa, he just moved it to a different dimension. John asks if Amazo can move it back, and he ends up doing so, where Dr. Fate offers to help Amazo on his journey, where he accepts as they leave. The episode then ends with Dr. Fate arriving at his place with Amazo, as Shiera comes out when Dr. Fate mentions that GL almost killed him. This is pretty good. You all know that I liked Amazo and Justice League, and this is just another example of that. With that too, Lex is an obvious W, and I do think that it's an interesting approach where Lex really tries to change his life for the better, but we get to see him slowly go back to his old ways with how he acts to the League's members in this episode. Also, the ending when we see Shiera again definitely gets me excited to see her come back, and how the relationship between her and the League will go. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense that Shiera ended up with Dr. Fate, considering that Dr. Fate's spells and all that stuff are in Themyscirian. Like, it makes a lot of sense. This episode goes above this little piggy, but below for the man who has everything. This starts off in an oil rig as some magma monster attacks it, where Aquaman tries to stop them, and he sounds different. It's still apparently the same voice actor, but to me, it sounds like someone completely different. Anyways, as Aquaman's trying to stop them, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman come in to help, as we see a new group of heroes called the Ultramen, as they save the heroes. Aquaman seems to know who they are, as they end up helping to stop the magma monsters and do so quite easily. After that, Wonder Woman talks to them, as they apparently offered the team a spot in the League, but they decline as their leader named Winddragon says that they aren't ready yet. Another one of them named Long Shadow seems to be keen to join, but Juice pulls him away. What a great superhero name. Anyways, we see that Maxwell Lord is the one in control of the Ultramen as he's being interviewed. He seems to be criticised for how he runs the Ultramen, since he takes a lot of endorsement deals, but he shrugs that off by saying that all the money goes straight back into the group. The League are listening to the interview as Superman, Aquaman, and Batman all don't like Max Lord because he seems to only want cash and publicity since he has a big ego. Wonder Woman's given them the benefit of the doubt, as she thinks that Max might be alright, but even if he isn't, the Ultramen themselves are good kids. We then go to the Ultramen as they're chilling, where Max Lord gives them a big check for some endorsement they did. Whilst he's in there, Long Shadow's asking why they can't join the League, but Winddragon and the rest of them just shrug him off. As that's going on, Wonder Woman's fighting Giganta, where Bizarro also comes out to fight Wonder Woman. But when he does, Long Shadow comes out and deals with Giganta. Wonder Woman tries to persuade Bizarro to stop, where it gives her the chance to knock him out when Long Shadow beats Giganta. After the fight, the two talk to each other as Long Shadow explains his backstory, where his scientist parents did experiments on him with growth hormones since he was really small as a child, which gave him the powers he has. When he's done with his backstory, he asks if he could really make it into the League, where she says that she does think that he could, but as she does, his phone rings as he has to go to the Ultramen. We then see the Ultramen in hospital beds, as we find out that Professor Hamilton's been helping with the Ultramen, but they might potentially die in the next few months or even the next few days. As Hamilton's talking to Max, Amanda motherfucking Waller comes out and says that it doesn't matter, since they need to get the second team ready. This is the absolute peak version of Amanda Waller, and it helps that CCH Pounder's voice is fantastic. As they're all talking, Long Shadow overhears Max, Hamilton, and Amanda talking, as Amanda says that they're all expandable. Max tells the team to stay the night, and as they do, Juice deactivates the cameras where they make a run for it. Long Shadow's apparently looking for something, as he then finds the clones of themselves, where we then have a little time skip as Hamilton, Max, and Amanda know that the team have seen the clones, but the clones are unharmed. Amanda wants Max to find the team and for the lab to be dismantled and relocated. We then see Max trying to find the Ultramen, where Winddragon pulls him to where they are. When he does, they interrogate him, where he explains that they're all artificial life forms that have lived in a life tube, and that the team's designed to be the ultimate superheroes. Long Shadow's in denial about it all, where Winddragon explains that his whole backstory is a lie, and that they implanted memories into them all and used actors to make it all real. He then asks Max how long they've been alive for, where Max explains that they're a little over a year old. Max continues to explain that they were made for the Canvas Project, which was to create a group of superheroes loyal to the government, since the Justice League aren't 100% loyal to them. Then he says that the clones are there to replace them whenever they wear out, where the Ultramen asks why they did this. He explains that he didn't do it, but even his superiors are small fish in the big picture, but they then end up leaving to go and fight the big fish. They break back into their headquarters to find them, where they seem to be all gone, where they then decide to destroy the place, even though there are innocent people in the building that have nothing to do with all this that's going on. Long Shadow decides to save the innocent people, where the League's members come in to help him with saving people. When they do, they manage to talk to the other Ultramen to let them help them, but they tell them the Justice League and Long Shadow, since they think that all the League wants is power. So they end up fighting where Batman easily takes out Juice, Aquaman knocks out Shifter and pimp slaps Downpour, and as Superman's choking from Wind Dragon, Long Shadow comes in and makes him stop since he realizes that he's about to kill his hero. Wind Dragon cries since all he wanted to do was be a hero, but they then take the Ultraman to custody besides Long Shadow, as he's with the Justice League where he tells them all that he knows. As the Ultramen are being taken away, Amanda comes out and orders them to come with her, and as she wants to take Long Shadow, Wonder Woman steps in front of him where Batman confronts Amanda. She gets her men ready to shoot where Superman and Aquaman step in front as well, and this is great.
Mine are bigger than yours.
Amanda orders her men to stand down as she lets him go with the League, and as Batman asks who they are, Amanda just straight up tells him to back off, Rich Boy. Now this is why I like Amanda Waller so much in this series, is that she's quite smart, but she also has a lot of power and control over the government, so she's actually a threat to the League. In my opinion, the only thing that's even gotten close to this adaptation is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Not the 2016 one. That fucking sucks! So the episode ends at the Watchtower as Long Shadow sees the Watchtower for the first time and is welcomed to the League. The ending alone made this episode so much better, but as the whole thing goes, it's good. As I said, the ending of this episode goes so damn hard, since we start to get a good taste of how Amanda Waller can really be a threat to the Justice League, since she knows a lot. This whole Cadmus project is going to be a big plot thread throughout this show, and we had hints of this before, but to see it actually start to develop is quite neat, even though you don't really care about the Ultramen. It's just cool to see how this show's done to attempt a massive plot thread that will go throughout many episodes of this show, and potentially be resolved in the future. As this episode goes, it's above Fearful Symmetry, but below this little piggy. Dark Heart starts with the couple climbing a mountain, and as the guy gets up, he disappears. So when the woman gets up, she sees some alien device as bugs come out to presumably get her. We then see the helicopters come out and arrive at the alien device, where the woman managed to escape on one of their helicopters as men go to look at the device. The robot bugs attack their helicopters, where they manage to destroy them, as some other alien robots come out and attack the men. Most of the League's members make their way there, as Batman notices that the alien just keeps devouring whatever's in its path. And also, are you looking okay, Vixen? What did they do to your face? Anywho, the League get there after talking to J.K. Simmons as the General, where Batman manages to contain the device in a gas that freezes the device, but as he does, some bugs try to get away where the League takes them out. As they are though, some of them manage to sneak up on the League and are headed for the town nearby, where the General and his men are evacuating the citizens. When Jean talks to the General, he decides to use the Watchtower to create a trench around the aliens, where they can't escape the area of the shot. He ends up doing so where the 144p aliens are stuck in the barrier, as Superman finds out that some kind of dark heart in the main device manages to replicate these aliens. Superman decides to see the Atom, as Batman suggests that they need his help, and as he arrives we see the Atom defeating some worm robot in a sub-dimension. He decides to grow to normal size, where Superman explains what's going on and takes him to the aliens, as the aliens manage to get rid of the trench that the Watchtower created. The League's trying to fight them off where they keep on replicating themselves, as they have to destroy the mothership to stop them, since the aliens will feed on anything to keep on replicating themselves until there's nothing left. They can't just go and beat the machine up though, since it will just fix itself, so the Atom has to get in there and try to reprogram the alien device to stop it from doing what it's currently doing. So Superman, Wonder Woman and Dr. Light take the Atom into the device, and damn, the Atom's lucky. But they end up getting to the device as the Atom jumps in and finds the Dark Heart, as he tries to reprogram it where he finds out the backstory of the device, as it even ate an entire planet. When he finds out what it is and what it's done, he gets attacked by some robotic tentacles, as he finds the core control and tries to break it. As he's trying to destroy it, the League are getting overwhelmed where he figures out that he could give it a heart attack since he can't destroy it by punching the heart. He manages to stop the flow of blood as it seems to work, because the purple blood comes out everywhere and the bugs just completely stop working. The episode then ends with the League talking to the General, as he mentions that they could use their resources since the League have a weapon of mass destruction over their heads, and they need something to defend themselves from them in case anything happened. I'm gonna be honest, this is probably the weakest episode yet. It's honestly just not interesting at all, since most of the episode is just the League fighting the aliens that keep on coming. Honestly got a bit bored watching this episode, because it just really isn't that interesting, besides the fact that J.K. Simmons plays the General, but he only shows up in like 1 or 2 scenes anyways. This episode has to go at the bottom of the list. We start this episode with 3 people doing a ritual in a bedroom as they accidentally bring Solomon Grundy back to life after accidentally stopping the spell halfway through. When one of the guy's 2 friends leave, Grundy attacks him as we then go to Dr. Fate's place as Aquaman's playing checkers with Hawkgirl as Amazo's watching them play. Aquaman gets shitty that she isn't taking the game seriously, since she doesn't really care about it and is still upset about leaving the league, but Dr. Fate comes in to tell Aquaman that he knew that this wouldn't work. He then explains that she's just still trying to find her way, and as they're talking, Dr. Fate ends up leaving after he hears something. We then see him find out that Grundy's gone from his grave, as we then see Shia talk to Inza, where she doesn't know what she is anymore since she was exiled from her homeworld, isn't Hawkgirl anymore, and that most people on Earth won't trust her again. She then continues by saying that when she does her job, most people get hurt, when Inza asks what happens when you don't do that, but Shia seems to not have a response. We then go to jail at a fashion show where Vixen's one of the models, and after the show we find out that they're currently dating, as he sees her backstage and they talk. He explains that they have league business but they decide to suit up and go help the league, as they find out that Grundy's back. Grundy's causing havoc in the city, and as they go to put a stop to him, and also even though Vixen kinda has a Beast Boy thing going on with her powers, I kinda dig it. Instead of transforming into animals, she uses her necklace to get the powers of the animals she chooses, and I think that's quite neat. But eventually Superman comes out to help them since Jail's knocked out, where Vixen takes him to safety, while Superman fights Grundy. He actually gets his ass kicked since Grundy seems to be more powerful than usual, as we then see Dr. Fate tell Amazo and Aquaman about how Grundy's back alive. Fate shows them that he has much more power than before, but Shia comes back to say that they need to go and help them and Grundy, since he deserves the benefit of the doubt since he sacrificed himself in the Terra Beyond 2-parter. Fate gives Shia a mace, since it could help them with defeating Grundy, and potentially helping him since he seems to be under the influence of some chaos magic. We then see Grundy still kicking their shit in, and as he knocks Superman into a bridge where it starts to fall, Aquaman comes out to save the bridge. The rest of them arrive where they talk to Superman, Vixen and GL, where they decide to come up with a plan to beat Grundy, but Shia wants to talk to him first. She goes up and tries to talk to him, but it seems to not work since he throws her into a building. When he does, the other league members come out and fight him. Eventually, Amazo decides to try and send Grundy away, but when he does, Grundy manages to absorb some of his power, where Amazo decides to get as far away as possible. Also, why do the subtitles of Amazo's teleporting sound effects say Riz? Damn, boy, that robot must have a lot of Riz. Anyways, the league starts to fight him again, where Fate tells the others that his magic is useless against chaos magic, since that's what brought Grundy back to life. They then try to give him a beatdown, but the only thing that seems to work is Shia's mace, where she's forced to beat him up with lightsaber sound effects. Eventually, Grundy falls into the sewer as he gets away, where Shia wonders why her mace affects him. Fate explains that the material her mace is made out of was developed to repel magic, and it may be the only thing that could defeat Grundy. She then starts to wonder if this is her destiny just to destroy an old friend, but she starts to accept that she needs to do it and needs to go after Grundy. She ends up finding him wounded where she ended up doing it, as she goes back to the league's members and says that it's over. As she's leaving, the press try to question her about if this would make up for her actions, and another person questions her about a dismissal from the league. John defends her by saying that she was never dismissed and that she could join whenever she wants to, but we then get a nice moment from Superman after John explained that Superman broke the tie on the vote.
I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. But mostly, I believe in my friends.
Now this is great. It just makes sense for him to let Shia stay, since he was in a very similar situation himself with the Legacy 2-parter. I love it when they acknowledge previous events in other DCAU shows, it's just great. But the episode ends after some people tell Shia to go back where she came from, as a woman then thanks Shia for saving them as they walk away. Yeah, this is good. Bringing back Shia in this capacity was such a good thing to do, since I really want to see a redemption arc where she gets back onto the league, and this does it pretty well. I really wish we got something like this with Superman where they have to redeem themselves to the public and their friends. The other big positive of this episode is seeing how Shia really wants to try and find another way to help Grundy, since she actually cared about him in the Terra Beyond 2-parter, and she doesn't want him to die again. I'm just glad that the show's really started to pick up again, since the last episode was honestly the worst out of this show so far. This goes above the return, but below for the man who has everything. Alright, so to finish off the first season, we get into the only 2-parter in this series. So I wonder if it's any good. It starts in Neo Gotham as we see a guy named David looking at his collection, whilst his partner seems to not care. She finds out that he stole all this stuff, where he tells her that he built a suit to travel back in time, where she cracks it at him for not stealing gold and jewels. He explains that he can't take big things like that, otherwise it would affect everything, where she says that he's a loser and that she shouldn't have been with him, where he decides to use it to get away from her. We then go to the Watchtower as Diana still has a grudge against Shia, where Batman asks GL how he's going with her. He says that they're fine because he's seeing Vixen now and that he's happy, and Batman already knows that he'd rather be with her instead. GL puts it back on him and decides to ask him about Diana, where he brushes GL off, where he decides to do the same thing as Batman. So he tries to explain why he wouldn't pursue a relationship with her, and this moment's great.
Diana's a remarkable woman. She's a valued friend. She's standing right behind me, isn't she?
An alarm then goes off as we see David breaking in, where he tries to steal Batman's utility belt. When he does, Batman stops him from stealing the spare belt, where he decides to travel back in time. When he does, Batman, Diana, and GL jump in behind him, where they end up in a desert as cowboys hold him at gunpoint. Also, I love it how they've now added Shayera into the intro of the show because she's now came back into the Justice League. Anyways, they end up stopping the cowboys pretty easily, but they find out that they ended up in the year 1879 as they take the cowboys' clothing and ride their horses to the closest town. They end up arriving in Elkhorn, where they decide to sit down in a saloon, whilst we see Batlash playing a poker game against a cowboy named Tobias, where Batlash wins. Tobias pulls a gun on him, where we see that it's a gun from the future, as many little guns come off the one gun, as he tells his men to take Batlash away and hang him at dawn, since Tobias apparently owns this town. The League figures out that someone's been messing with time, but they decide to break out Batlash, as GL uses his ring to scare the guard by using it to make a ghost figure. When they break him out, we find out that the inmate is David, the one that created the suit, where they find out that he got robbed when he arrived in the West by Tobias, as he stole the time travel belt. He used it to take tech from the future to control the town, such as his 6-gun and even the cameras that are set up in the jail. They decide to take David with them, as men outside try to shoot them down, as we then see some other men come in and stop the people with guns. We even see that one of them is Jonah motherfucking Hex, as he stops the minigun, and god, that's a face we haven't seen since Batman the Animated Series, but I'm happy to see him back. So after they take out the gunmen, they introduce themselves to the League as Batlash knows them, and tells Jonah that they definitely don't work for Tobias. They end up explaining how Tobias took over the town, where he came in 6 months ago, and after being kicked out of town, he came back with his future tech and took over. After the backstory, the League explains that they're here to stop Tobias, and that David is the one that indirectly caused all of this, but they all decide to team up and take out Tobias. They end up approaching his place where they take out a bunch of robots and even a dinosaur, where they make their way to the house. When they're out the front, a tank comes out and even a few giant robots where they manage to take them all out. They then find Tobias as they destroy his 6-guns, where he tries to make a run for it. As he does, the sheriff manages to knock him out and steal the time travel device. When he gets back with the device, David manages to steal it off Batman, where the three of them go into the portal again. They end up in Neo Gotham as the Jokers try to attack the three, but Shutterstock, Batman and Warhawk come in to help them, where GL recognizes Static, but Warhawk calls GL his dad. Shit, what a cliffhanger. Well, this episode's solid. Seeing Jonah Hex again is neat, but to be honest, I wish he was the main cowboy that we met in this episode, since I liked him a lot in BTAS. Still quite interesting that we end up in the West where they have to fight someone that's been stealing future tech, but I'm honestly just keen to see where this next part goes, where they're in the future. Goes above this little piggy but below the return. To finish off Season 1, we continue right where we left off, as they all have to try and stop the Jokers, and apparently the DD twins killed a Green Lantern. I guess because of their yellow whips? Besides that, I don't know how the fuck they did that. Anyways, there's apparently more than just the two twins now, and most of them seem to be robotically enhanced, and even Bonk is back now, even after dying in Return of the Joker, so I assume that he's just a complete robot. The heroes end up escaping the fight to the future League's hideout, which is in the high school since it's completely abandoned, where this future seems to be much worse than what it was in Batman Beyond. Justice League assume that they would go to the Watchtower, but Terry explains that the Watchtower is gone, and as Batman asks about the Batcave, old Bruce comes out and says that this is all they have left. I really like this setup where David accidentally messes the timeline to the point where there's barely any heroes left. It's some really good stuff. But as Batman talks to his older self, GL talks to Warhawk where he hints towards the fact that he got with Shayera and gave birth to him, where Batman comes in and tells him to stop since you don't want to know too much about your future. So the League try to gather notes as we see David in a new villain costume, where he has his partner in a fancy house as the Jokers give him the bad news. David calls himself Kronos now, and we get to see a weird animation error with one of the DD twins looking like a FNAF title screen for a moment. But Kronos finds out that Chucko actually told Batman what was going to happen earlier as a bribe, where he throws him into the Jurassic times as the asteroid's about to hit Earth. Well, that's a way to kill someone. Kronos then tells the Jokers to kill the Justice League, as his partner asks him to let his mother go, but he seems to be shitty that no matter what he does, he can't make her happy. He gets shitty and walks away, where the heroes find out a way to beat the belt with a disc that can override it, but as Batman creates it, Diana disappears, since in this alternate universe she would have never left the island, or possibly would have never been born. They then see that they don't have much time left since the space-time continuum is breaking, where Batman decides to go out and try to get answers as to where Kronos is. Batman's a better face-off with Ghoul, but Static comes in and shocks him as the heroes interrogate him for answers. This moment where old Bruce takes over interrogating Ghoul is fantastic. They end up finding out where Kronos may be as they find out where his wife is, and we actually get to see Hal Jordan in this universe where John turns into Hal because of the space-time continuum changing. But Hal seems to know exactly what's going on as he asks where they can find Kronos, but they then get led to a coliseum with the jail from the last episode in the middle. When Hal scans it, he turns back into John as they all decide to go in as they see Kronos sleeping. His wife wakes him up like an absolute dumbass as he pulls the Jokers in to fight them and makes a run for it. So the heroes fight the Jokers, but as they're fighting, Static gets pulled into a different time, as old English soldiers and even a mammoth get pulled into their fight. Batman gets to Kronos where he tries to persuade him to stop, but decides to try and travel back to the start of time as Batman and GL jump in to stop him. GL manages to use his ring to stop him from travelling there, where Batman uses the disc on him as everything seems to be reset to the way it was before. Both of them then question if what just happened really happened, as only the two of them remember what happened as GL asks what happened to Kronos. Batman explains it that he reprogrammed it to make sure the belt would never exist, where we then see David stuck in a constant loop. This is really good. The future where most of the heroes are wiped out and David rules all of Gotham and potentially the world is great. It's just such an interesting dynamic to see Batman interact with his old self, but we unfortunately don't get to see too much of him interacting with Terry, which would have been interesting since he's the new Batman. The other stuff where GL gets to learn that in the future he ends up with Shiera and has Warhawk as his son is really interesting, and I really hope it's brought up more in the future because he's currently dating Vixen. I hope that becomes a plot point in the future because that could be really interesting. But you really get to see how much of a threat Kronos is, since he's messed with the timeline so much to the point where everything's basically destroying itself. I'm not a fan of him as a character, but it's just a really enjoyable episode. Goes above The Return, but below Wake the Dead. You know what? This is a good first season. I just find it nuts that the second episode of this show is honestly one of my favorites out of the whole show. It's just such a fantastic idea to adapt to Alan Moore's story to this show, and it honestly shows how good the episode is that even Alan Moore liked it and allowed his name to be put on it. For real though, the man likes none of his work's adaptations, besides this. For good reason though, because it's just such an emotional episode where Clark gets the life he always dreamed of, but has to push it all away when he realizes that it's all just a dream. I reckon this episode will probably stay in my top 5 by the time I finish this show. Enough about my favourite episode this season. I think the next 2 seasons will probably be better. This season just setting up a lot of bigger plot threads that will potentially get more development and a conclusion in the future, such as the whole Cadmus arc, Lex being evil again, and things like John and Shiera's relationship. It's really just setting up a lot of events that are going to happen through season 2, so I really hope that they're paid off in a really satisfying way. Even with that though, the setup's actually enjoyable to watch because the episodes that are setting up the future events are some of the best episodes in this season. Episodes like The Return and Ultimatum build up these plot points, and they're definitely the best parts of those episodes, so I'm really interested to see where they go. As the worst episodes go, Darkheart and Kids Stuff are just episodes that have self-contained stories that you just don't care about. With Darkheart, it's just some random alien device that isn't really a character, and with Kids Stuff, it's Mordred. He just sucks, and he's annoying as shit. There are some episodes here that I surprisingly enjoy more than I thought I would, such as Wake the Dead and the Once and Future Thing 2-parter. You know what? I'm overall impressed with how this show started off with its first season. So let's see if the second season is just as good or even better than this season. And we start that off with... The Cat and the Canary starts with men loading some boxes into a factory, as Black Canary's gone to stop them but is waiting for Wildcat to come and help. He seems to be busy in a fight, as Black Canary decides to go in herself to stop the men. She manages to kick their asses, but some of them get into the truck as they try to drive away. Canary stops them by using her ultrasonic voice, where we see that Wildcat was in what I assume to be an illegal boxing match, as the fight finishes up on one of the men's laptops. We then go to the Watchtower as Oliver's training, where Black Canary and Green Arrow talk to each other. She offers to spar with him, and this line's quite funny.
You happy punching the bag, or you want to go a few rounds with me? I am talking about sparring.
That'd be nice too.
They end up sparring with one another, as Oliver gives her advice, but when he wins, she asks for his help, since she's worried about Wildcat. He ends up agreeing after they bet if Canary can get out of his hold, as she manages to do so. The two of them suit up and get on her bike, where she explains that Wildcat has been doing some illegal cage fighting against superpowered criminals, and he's doing it because he used to be a boxing heavyweight champion and he wants to keep them fighting. Canary's worried that he's gone through a midlife crisis and that something will happen to him, as we see Wildcat talk to a woman named Roulette. He tells her that he's not going to fight anymore because it's interfering with his work, and because he's letting his friends down. When he tells her that, she ends up subtly trying to persuade him to stay. We go back to Black Canary and Green Arrow as they try to get away into the illegal cage matches, as Canary asks Green Arrow for money. He gets shitty since he thinks that she only wants the green, but she explains that it isn't about that and she thought that she could trust him. So they end up giving the man money where they get tickets to the fight, where we see that it's Wildcat against Atomic Skull, where the two of them sneak their way around. They end up getting to Wildcat as Canary explains that she's there to help him, where he doesn't want to help since he thinks that he's only here to fight. She tries to persuade him to leave, where he ends up getting shitty since the League rarely sends him on missions anymore, and that's why he's doing these illegal cage matches since he wants to fight instead of just sitting around waiting. Wildcat shoves Canary away, where Green Arrow tries to make him stop, but Canary pulls him away, where he decides that he's had enough and just leaves. Canary follows Green Arrow as he's asking questions about why he's been put in the middle of all this, but she explains that he's just a friend and like a father figure to her, since Oliver thought that the two of them were a thing. He apparently trained her where she doesn't want him to get kicked out of the League or hurt, where Oliver agrees to keep on helping her, but he knows that Wildcat won't budge with leaving the fights. Canary decides to go through with another plan as they suit up, where we then see the fight start. The two of them toss each other around for quite a while, until Green Arrow and Black Canary comes in and stops Wildcat from punching Atomic Skull. Men come out to try and stop the two, or they make quick work of them, as the superpowered villains try to stop them as well. Wildcat stops them to ask what they're doing, where Canary says that they're stopping all this and that he needs to decide which side he's on. He ends up just walking away as he lets the villains get to them, but Canary yells out to Roulette to see if she'd like to see two League members fight each other, where she says that it's her and Wildcat. She says yes, as Canary says that if she wins, Wildcat's going to be banned from cage fighting, but if Wildcat wins, she'll never bother them again. Roulette agrees to these conditions, where they get put into the dressing rooms. Wildcat says that he won't do it as he only fights people that have it coming, as Roulette says that if he doesn't fight, she won't let him fight again, and that he needs to stay undefeated. We then see Green Arrow and Black Canary, as he's questioning if she's really going to go and fight him, where she explains that it's the only way to get him to stop, since she needs to win this fight. He starts to doubt her a bit, where he then says that she thinks that everything's a game. She says that it isn't, and when he gets her to prove it, he knocks her out with some gas, as Green Arrow decides to fight Wildcat instead. The two of them get in the cage as Wildcat kicks his ass, but Canary wakes up and tries to get Green Arrow out of there, but she can't as he beats the shit out of Green Arrow. He keeps on taunting Wildcat until he eventually knocks him out, but as he's gone to the ground, Wildcat seems to have accidentally killed him. What a fucking twist. Roulette comes out after Canary cracks it at him, where she says that he's taken the fights to a whole new level, where Wildcat says that he's out of it for good this time and walks away. Everyone leaves as Canary stays there with Green Arrow and talks to him, but as she gives him a kiss, he wakes up and explains that he used a device to put him into a metabolic stasis for a few minutes. She understands that he did it to make Wildcat know how it feels to kill someone, and when she understands, Wildcat comes out and helps him up, where he says that it worked. When they leave, Roulette says that Wildcat will be back here in another month, and that he will fight again, as Canary says that he will, but not here, as she destroys the stadium. We end up at the Watchtower as Wildcat apologizes to Canary, but he takes him to Jean, where he's going to make sure that he's telling the truth. Green Arrow comes out as he talks to Black Canary, where he asks her to join him for a cup of coffee. She says yes, but he says that she's buying. Okay, this is a good episode. I just like how this actually develops the characters that we've barely seen in the show so far, with Black Canary and Wildcat getting some real character development. Wildcat's actually the most interesting part, since he's an old boxer that just wants to keep on fighting, but his fighting ends up getting in the way with everything else going on in his life. The relationship between Green Arrow and Black Canary is actually really well done. It isn't as interesting, but it's still solid. We start off with Big Barda helping a man named Mr. Miracle set up an escape act, where he needs to escape his restraints before the train hits him. The train falls on him instead of just running him over like a train usually would, where he actually managed to escape as Big Barda cracks it at him because she thought that he died. The men that they were with named Oberon disappeared, as Granny Goodness comes out and she explains that they need to do what she says to ensure his safety. Yes! DT villain! Yes! And Granny Goodness is not interesting at all. I have to say it. I don't like her. So Granny tells him to help her rescue Calabac since he's in prison after Darkseid disappeared after the Twilight two-parter. She wants them to do that because she'll basically rule Apocalypse if they do, but they then go back to the Watchtower as Elongated Man talks to the Flash about how they've been treated. I tell you what's interesting, this is the first time the Flash has any dialogue in this show. He has not said a single line in the show before this. Shown up once or twice as a background character, but has not had a single line until now. But the both of them don't like how they're treated by the other League members, as the Flash beats Elongated Man at Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Mr. Miracle and Big Bertha walk past them, as they then go to talk to Jean about what's going on, but the Flash says that he will help, but he quickly gets turned down. Jean says that it won't help a new dictator take over Apocalypse, and because the League won't help them, the two of them walk away. The Flash starts to question Jean since they're meant to help people, but he tells him to look at the bigger picture as the Flash leaves. He catches up to the two to offer his help again, and damn, they just treat Wally like shit, especially Big Barda. Big Barda, Big Bertha, I don't fucking know. What did old Wally do wrong? Anywho, the Flash proves his worthiness by stealing Big Barda's weapon, but they end up allowing him to come with them. We then see Calabac in a prison as the man holding him captive, named Vermin, uses the last torture device that he has on him. As that's going on, we see Granny as she has Oberon captive, but the three heroes arrive on Apocalypse. They fight some men that come after them as they manage to beat them quite easily. After they do, they make their way to where Caliban's being held captive, as Mr. Miracle doesn't recognize this place anymore. They've completely changed the layout of everything, as he gets flashbacks of him being tortured by Granny, where his plans are out the window, but Big Butter and the Flash decide to still help him as they continue to try and find Caliban. Just before they fight some robots, the Flash finds out that the two of them were both raised on Apocalypse, but they managed to escape, but the Flash then saves Caliban as the other two fight the robots. They end up saving Caliban while they try to find their way out, as Mr. Miracle ends up being stuck behind a wall as the room starts to flood with water. As he's about to drown in the room, the other three get sent down a trap floor as they run back into Mr. Miracle and continue trying to escape. They find the exit, but guns get pulled on them as Mr. Miracle manages to destroy them all. When he does though, two flame walls trap Mr. Miracle in, but lucky for him, the Flash manages to easily deal with the walls. As they get close to the exit, many robots come after them as Caliban and Big Barda destroy them all. When they do, Vermin decides to make the place self-destruct as they manage to escape while they confront Granny. Granny tells him that Oberon was rude to her, she's going to kill him, but Caliban was actually revealed to be Jean in disguise. As that's revealed, he ends up finding out where Oberon is by reading Granny's mind, but the Flash manages to get there in time and save him. They leave Apocalypse at the boom tube, but Big Barda punches Granny on the way out, where we then see the Flash talk to Jean at the Watchtower. The Flash tries to explain what he did because he went behind his back to help the other two, and I actually really like how this episode subverts your expectations here, where the Flash is explaining himself.
I was only going to ask if you wanted to play Brawlin' Bots.
Yeah, this episode's alright. Honestly, if you ask me, the ending where Flash and Jean talk to each other is the best part. The rest of the episode's okay, but you all should know from my previous DCAU videos that I'm not a fan of Granny Goodness. She's honestly just so boring, besides from the voice being Edward Asner. Besides that though, I really don't understand why Jean and the others treated the Flash the way they did early in this episode. It really doesn't make much sense going from Starcross to this, because he literally didn't do anything wrong at all. Definitely goes below the first episode. The episode starts as we see Amanda Waller waking up at 4:30 in the morning, where she goes through her morning routine. As she's getting her tea, we even see that Lex is running for president, which is a nice little callback to A Better World. She then goes in the shower, and when she's done she tries to reach for the towel, where Batman gives it to her. He tells her to get dressed because they need to talk. Batman starts by telling her information about herself that he found out, as she wonders if she's meant to be impressed, as she could do the same thing to him. Amanda says that she could expose him when she wants, as he says that he would expose her for all the things that she's done, such as having secret weapons, doing all the illegal cloning experiments, and even bypassing Congress. She asks what he wants, where he wants to know what she thinks that she's doing, and she basically explains that she wants to make sure that the government has weapons to fight off the League if they ever decide to go rogue, such as what happened in the other dimension, since Superman had to tell them all about what happened there. The reason why they want their own weapon is because if the League ever went rogue, they would take over the world in every single scenario if the government didn't have the weapons to fight them off. All of this is being done under the codename Cadmus, where Batman explains that if they bring a threat to the world, the League will take them down. Amanda turns it back on him because the Watchtower has a giant weapon faced at the Earth at all times, where she tries to explain that they're the good guys as they're trying to protect the country from them. This whole scene is fucking fantastic. I really had to go into all that detail about it because it's such a brilliant scene where Amanda really stands her own against Batman and actually makes some good points. So Batman then leaves as Amanda's shaking after their confrontation, but Batman tells the League's members at the Watchtower what he found out about Cadmus. Batman goes further into it, explaining that the cloning events that happened in this show's last season with Galatea and the Ultramen were they're doing. We then contrast that scene with Professor Hamilton telling Amanda that Galatea is almost ready, and even their Doomsday project is almost ready, where we even see the J.K. Simmons general there as well as Hugo Strange and a new character named Tala, and even Dr. Milo. Damn, we haven't seen Hugo Strange or Dr. Milo since Batman the Animated Series. As they're talking, we go back to the Watchtower, where the Flash asks why they're so worried. Batman explains that the government's trying to be extra careful since the Justice Lords took over their dimension, but the League then starts to discuss where Project Cadmus could have got their funding from, since it isn't directly from the federal budget. They theorize that it's Lex funding them as Batman has the question looking into it, and he then explains that he's their best bet. We see Amanda talking to Dr. Milo as she pulls funding from his experiments, and as he leaves, he goes to Doomsday where he shows him what the government has been doing to him. He then explains that he was created from Superman's DNA, and he was trained to hate him and eventually kill Superman by Amanda Waller and Professor Hamilton. They tried to send Doomsday to space since he was uncontrollable, where he ended up breaking out and landing back on Earth, where he ended up getting lobotomized by the other dimension's Superman. I like how this episode just explains how Doomsday showed up in the two-parter A Better World, and this episode actually references that two-parter a lot, and I like that quite a lot too. Milo ends up breaking him out, where he thinks that he persuaded Doomsday to go after Waller and Hamilton, and when he does, Doomsday presumably kills him and then goes to find Superman. He ends up escaping, as we then see a few of the League's members helping people escape an island because the volcanoes are about to erupt, where Doomsday comes in and tries to kill Superman. They fight inside the volcano as Amanda and the General find out that Doomsday is on the island fighting Superman. Amanda tells the General to do whatever it takes to kill Doomsday, but the General then makes his men send a giant missile at the island. As Superman's still fighting Doomsday, we see Jean and Batman find out that a missile full of kryptonites headed towards the island, where Batman rings Amanda telling her to call off the missile. Batman says that if anyone dies on the island, he'll come for her, but she then hangs up as she says that she'll do what she has to do. Batman figured out that she didn't know about the missile, as he takes the Javelin to go and stop the missile, where he goes as fast as he can. We then see Amanda ask the General what the hell he's doing, and to call it off, but the General can't stop it. Superman and Doomsday are still fighting, as Wonder Woman gets told from Jean that a kryptonite missile is headed their way, but she goes to help save Superman, as the Flash has to stay and help get the people off the island. Batman tries to shoot the missile down, but it has a force field around it, where he decides to attach the Javelin to the missile, and manages to redirect it away from the island, as he then gets out just before it blows up. All the people on the island escape just in time, since the missile blows up in the water and starts to flood the island, where Superman manages to throw Doomsday into the volcano as it erupts. The whole island's destroyed as Wonder Woman saves Superman, when we then go back to the Watchtower as the League try to question Doomsday while stuck in a giant rock. He basically just says that he will get free and kill Superman, where he decides to use the Phantom Zone projector to send Doomsday to the Phantom Zone. The episode then ends as Wonder Woman and Superman visit Bruce whilst he's healing, where he knows that they sent Doomsday to the Phantom Zone. He then says that they're speaking like the Justice Lords, because they're passing judgment like gods, where he admits that Cadmus is right to be scared of them. Bruce then asks Superman what would happen if Lex becomes president like he did in their world, and what would stop him from doing the same thing that they did. Superman jokes and says that Batman has the kryptonite that he holds onto, where he tells him that he can't joke today, and that he took a bullet for him. Superman apologizes and says that he's right, but he doesn't need to worry about the League, and that he knows him as the two of them leave. When they do, this shot of Bruce seeing Lex running for president on TV goes so hard. This episode's really good. I honestly really like how this episode managed to tie Doomsday into the whole Cadmus project, since it really shows how much of a threat the whole Cadmus project can be to the League. It also brings up some really good points, since all the government had before creating the project is just the League's word that they weren't going to go rogue or turn evil. It's another episode that builds on future events, but it also shows us a bit of what to expect in the future, which I really like since Doomsday is a big threat to them all, and especially Lex potentially becoming president, which seems to be a constant looming presence over the League in this episode. It's honestly some fantastic stuff, and I like how we get callbacks to a lot of things that happened in previous shows in this universe. Those things actually start to get paid off here, instead of just being dropped when they were brought up in the original episodes. This is easily the best episode in this season so far. Shit, even if it was just the first 5 minutes that were good, this would still be the best episode in this season. An episode all about the Suicide Squad? Well, Task Force X, but same thing really. Just praying that this episode does it right, because I have faith that they will. Anywho, the episode starts with Deadshot being taken to the electric chair, where a man comes in with a letter as Deadshot's being let out of prison. We find out that the man's actually Rick Flag as he's driving Deadshot, where he explains that they've put explosive nanites in his last meal. He then explains that he'll blow his head off if he tries to escape, where Deadshot finds out that he needs to do a job for Rick to keep his head. The job itself is getting into the Watchtower, and as we find out that information, the two of them arrive in a factory on the docks. Rick introduces him to Task Force X, which is made up of Captain Boomerang, the Clock King, and Plastique. Fuck yes, the Clock King is back, baby. But this show loves to bring back old villains from Batman the Animated Series, and I love it. So they go over the whole plan where Rick explains that they're going to sneak their way into the Watchtower and destroy the reactor that powers the whole thing. Also, Donald Gibson's Aussie accent is terrible. I love it how most adaptations of Captain Boomerang can't even get an Aussie accent right. Like, they don't even cast an Aussie actor half the time. I don't understand why they just don't cast an Aussie as Captain Boomerang. He's an Australian. The Clock King then tells them the main threats on the Watchtower, which are Captain Atom, GL, and Jean, where Jean finally gets Cold Martian Manhunter. Took them long enough. They end up talking about some what-if scenarios when on the Watchtower, but they seem to understand what they're doing when they manage to sneak their way on there. We then go to a few people out in the middle of a cornfield as they seem to work for the Watchtower. As they're waiting to be beamed up, they get knocked out by tranquilizer guns, where Task Force X manages to get themselves into the Watchtower. They just act like normal workers, but they manage to sneak into an elevator, where they then get their gear ready in case they need it. They split up in two, where Deadshot and Plastique make their way down another elevator to set up bombs at the reactor, as Rick and Captain Boomerang try to get through some doors. Deadshot and Plastique end up arming the explosives, and as they blow up, Captain Boomerang and Rick get through to the collections room, as they steal the Annihilator suit from the episode Hawk and Dove. The League's members try to go to the blown up reactor to fix it, where Rick manages to get the suit working after making Captain Boomerang mad by punching him. Deadshot and Plastique catch up to Rick and Captain Boomerang, as Captain Atom, whilst trying to contain the reactor, realizes that this wasn't an accident. As they realize that, Task Force X runs into a few of the League's heroes, but they manage to take them down after quite a big fight. They manage to get to the transporter, but as they do, Jean comes in to stop them. He fucks them up, but he gets defeated by the suit when he gets ripped in half. Jean forms himself together as Plastique holds Atom Smasher hostage since she has an explosive device near his mouth as he's knocked out. Captain Atom manages to stop her, but as he does, the rest of the squad use the transporter and get away after leaving Plastique on the watchtower as the explosion goes off. Jean tries to use the transporter after they get away, where they manage to destroy it just before leaving. We then see the squad back at the factory where Amanda and Tala see the suit, and they think that they can definitely use it for their benefit. Rick gets dismissed by Amanda as she calls him a good soldier and that he should be proud. The squad walks out as Deadshot says that he's gonna leave, where Rick punches him and tells him that these missions only give him 5 years off his sentence. The episode then ends at the watchtower as Jean and Jill figure out that one of the workers, named Vance, gave the squad the information they needed, where Jean gets a bit dark and it's honestly awesome. He basically wants to go into his mind and wipe out his memory of the last 2 years, since he's a liability to the League, but GL tells him that they can't trust anyone now. Hot damn, another good episode. I'm just surprised with how well they set up Task Force X in this one episode alone. It's also good that they actually managed to get shit done and really put the League in a really bad situation after they compromised the watchtower by destroying the reactor. I will say, it was actually a missed opportunity to not have Harley in the Suicide Squad. I know that she's constantly in the lineup now, but back then I reckon it would have been fantastic since Arlene Sorkin is the definitive Harley Quinn. They could have just replaced Plastique with her, since most people don't know who she is, but I guess each of the members needed something to do in regards to the plan. I also like how this episode shows a bit of a darker side to Jean, where you get to see him actually be really pissed off and shitty at the end of the episode. It's some good stuff, and I hope we get to see more of it. The only thing though is that Rick Flag is boring. I guess what do I expect since he's just a typical soldier, but I wish he had a bit more of a personality. Anywho, this episode goes above the Cat and the Canary, but below the Doomsday Sanction. Balance starts as Tal is trying to do a spell to bring Force back, as he's stuck in the mirror behind her. I don't know how that works, since the man literally got dusted away, like full on Thanos snapped away in Paradise Lost. Hey, I'm happy to see Robert Englund back though.
We're completely fucked!
So we then see that Tal is actually planning on putting Phos's spirit into the Annihilator, where her spell ends up failing. Phos knows how to do it as he tells her how to do it, where he then gets freed from the mirror. When he does, Tyler gets sucked into it as he takes over the suit. Also, I just noticed that the intro of the show just uses the same clips now instead of using clips of the current episode, which I actually like that a lot since it doesn't spoil the episodes themselves. We then go to the watchtower as Diana and Wally catch up over lunch. As they do, Hawkgirl comes to sit with them as the Flash apparently asks her to eat lunch with them as well. Hawkgirl walks away since Diana and her are still having beef with one another, as the Flash gets her to sit down. He tries to help them talk again and patch things up, but it doesn't seem to work as they realise that it's not working and decide to leave. The Flash makes a little fool of himself after they leave, where we then see Diana as she sees Jean trying to help Jason Blood as he transforms into Etrigan. He's pissed since the gates of Tartarus have been opened, as we then see all of the League's members with magic powers are all restless. By the way, don't listen to this without the visuals. So Diana goes back to her room where she sees the god Hermes, and is he voiced by Jason Bateman? Holy shit it is! So he hands Diana a letter from Zeus, where he ends up handing her the wrong letter.
For a good time, call Podenimus.
Wrong scroll.
But he then hands her the right one as Zeus tells her to go to Tartarus and deal with Felix Faust. We then see how he did it as Hermes is explaining it, where he got Hades out of the gates to be his prisoner. After that, Wonder Woman goes to talk to Shira in her room, but sees that she isn't there, but her mace is still in her room. As she grabs it, Shira comes in wondering what Diana's doing. She explains that she needs it and that she'll be back with it, but Shira ends up explaining that if she wants the mace, she's going to go as well, since it's a package deal. So they go to Themyscira to help the Amazonians with the gates, as Wonder Woman says that they need to go into Tartarus and stop Faust. Just before she does, her mother grants her the full power of the lasso and armor, where Wonder Woman and Shira go into the gates whilst the Amazonians close the gates. They fight a few demons off until they think that Shira is an angel, where they flee. They then make their way to Faust, where the two of them argue with one another. After arguing for a bit, they decide to go for Faust first instead of Hades, where they interrogate a demon to find out where he is. Diana ends up using her lasso as she realizes that she can use it to get the truth out of people, where he leads them right to his doorstep. They go inside to what ends up being a giant library, where they then see him sitting at a desk reading books as he has some kind of magic book that would help him, where he then talks to Wonder Woman Shiera. He explains that he's down here and wants to torture Hades for a few millennia, and as Wonder Woman and Shiera are going to fight him, he just sends them away. They get sent into the snow, where they find Hades tied up as vultures are pecking at him, as they end up freeing him and go back for Faust. They start to burn the book collection to get his attention, where Faust and Hades fight. The two of them come in to help, and after struggling for a bit, Wonder Woman uses Shiera's mace while she's restrained to beat Faust. When she does, the two of them have a nice moment as Hades says that he's going to punish Faust's soul for eternity. Hades then tells Wonder Woman about how her mother never told her who her father is, as she says that he helped her mother mold her out of clay. Shiera says that he's lying and that she should use her lasso on him, but she says that it doesn't matter since she doesn't care because she knows who raised her. The episode then ends as Diana talks to her mother, where she thanks her for unlocking the power of her armor and lasso, where her mother tells the two of them to stay with her for at least a meal. She also says that Themyscira is her home, and that if the gods don't like it, they can deal with her. I honestly didn't expect to be a big fan of this episode, but nah, it's good. It's mainly the Diana and Shiera stuff that works so well, since they quite naturally patch up their relationship with one another. They aren't quite best friends or anything, but they still get to the point where they're at least friendly with one another, and they can work together if they need to. As Faust goes, he's just pretty similar to how he was in Justice League, where he really isn't in the episode for that long, and same as Hades. It works just fine because the main focus is Diana and Shiera's relationship, and how they managed to fix it in the end since Diana held her grudge for quite a while. I really wish that we saw Faust do more with the suit, since it was built up in the last episode to be a big turning point for the show. It really sets up that the government now has a massive weapon that they can use against the League and cause massive damage with, but for it to only get used against Hades, Wonder Woman and Shiera is kind of a waste. So as this episode goes, it's above Cat and the Canary, but below Task Force X. We start this episode with a few men waiting outside of a mansion with a limo, as we see Huntress making her way in as she then knocks out the two men. She managed to get into the mansion after avoiding some lasers, where she sees a man named Steven in bed, where she shoots him with her crossbow. After she does, she pulls the covers off just to see that it was pillows, but she then gets beamed up to the watchtower, as Jean cracks it at her because he told her to stay away from him. He then explains that he's been watching her, as he relocated Steven, where he admits that tonight was a test and she obviously failed. Jean then tells her to pack her things since she's out of the League, where she throws her identity card at him and storms out. As she's gonna go pack her things, she overhears the question conspiring about Cadmus, where she tries to talk to him. He doesn't seem interested, but she says that she came to help him, as she'll give him info about Cadmus if he helps with finding Steven. Speaking about Steven, we see him in a house as Green Arrow, Black Canary and a few men are in the house with him. One of the men are talking to him about being prosecuted, where Steven then decides to talk about Black Canary, which manages to stir up Green Arrow. We then go to Huntress as the questioner arrives in his car where he lets her drive it, as we go back to Steven where Green Arrow is being held back from kicking his ass. Eventually Steven manages to get to Black Canary as she loses her cool, but the two of them are ordered to do guard duty outside of the house. Apparently Canary punched Steven, but they then decide to sit up in the treehouse where they have a romantic moment with one another. As they're having their moment, cops arrive as we then see the questioner and Huntress arrive behind them. Cops end up being fakes where they let Steven out, as Huntress and the Question fight Black Canary and Green Arrow. Green Arrow and Black Canary win as they find out that Steven's gone from the house. Canary then blames them for what's happening, as the Question finds a storage key where Canary takes it and goes with Green Arrow to find the place the key's for. As they leave, the Question tells Huntress that he gave him a different key, but the other two realise that the Question was conning them, where they then wait to see where they're going. Whilst they're driving, the Question realises that Huntress actually knows nothing about Cadmus, but decides to ask why she's after Steven, but he figures out why she's after him. It's because her father worked with him and was actually his boss, since Huntress's father is basically just Scarface. Like Al Pacino Scarface, not the dummy. Eventually Steven came in and killed her parents when she was young, but as she's explaining what happened to her, they notice that they're being followed. They manage to lose them after going on the train tracks and turning off just before the train comes, where Jean saves Green Arrow and Black Canary by beaming them elsewhere. We then see the Question figure out that maybe Steven's waiting for a boat to come in, where Black Canary and Green Arrow overhear them from below. So we then see Steven come out as a boat arrives, where Green Arrow and Black Canary attack him as Huntress was about to. He gives them a decent fight as the Question comes in to help them, as Huntress manages to get him to stop where she's about to kill him. When she's going to, Steven's son comes off the boat where he explains that all he wanted to do was disappear with his son. The Question then comes in to ask her if this is what she really wanted, as she shoots some beams onto him instead, which knocks him out. They get handed into the police as Huntress wonders why the Question risked his life for her, where he admits that he actually likes her. When he says that, Huntress pulls him in as they kiss. They then walk away as Black Canary says it's ill. This is a pretty solid episode. It really just works at developing the Question and Huntress's relationship in a similar vein to the Cat and the Canary. As you know, I really like the Question as a character, and I actually think that Huntress works well with him. The relationship is actually pretty similar to Green Arrow's and Black Canary's. There isn't really much else to note about the episode, since Steven's basically just a huge bloke that's a mob boss and that's it. Goes above the ties that bind, but just below the Cat and the Canary. Flash starts with the League fighting Parasite, as he manages to steal the powers of Elongated Man and then Metamorpho. As he does, Batman comes in to stop him, and as he does, a plane's crashing into Metropolis. Superman comes in to save it as Jean asks for his help, where Captain Marvel comes in to stop Parasite instead. Yes, it's Captain Marvel, not Shazam. It would literally still be the same name if Marvel didn't have an issue with it, even though this Captain Marvel was made about 30 years before Carol Danvers. He's the new recruit to the League, where Superman then comes in and meets him, and as the League's members leave, the press surround Captain Marvel. Lewis ends up questioning him and asking how it feels to be a part of the League, where he says that it's great and that he's lucky to be a part of the League. She ends up asking what he values about the League, where he mentions all the good that the League does, and even mentions that they managed to change the world and did so with Lex. Captain Marvel leaves just after as he goes back to his hometown of Fawcett City, where we see him turn back into Billy Batson as he goes to school and arrives late. We go to the Watchtower later on as Captain Marvel's being friendly with the League's members he runs into. But as he's greeting Vigilante and Shining Knight, Superman tells him to come with him. They then go to the conference room where the original League's members are waiting for them at a table, as Superman asks Captain Marvel about what he said to the press, as it made the headline on the papers. Superman gets shitty about it since they've fought Lex time and time again, and that the League's heroes don't play favourites, sell deodorant on TV, or even get involved in politics. I also love how the Flash reacts to Superman saying that they don't sell deodorant on TV. It's a nice little callback, but it's quite funny. As Superman says that they can't endorse supervillains to be president, Captain Marvel cracks it a little, where Superman tells him that he's not to make any more public statements without telling the League first. We then see Superman watching an interview where Lex is the guest on the show, as Lex mentions that he's working on building his own city called Lexor City. The host then asks him about how people may be criticizing and still hating him, but Lex says that people can change and uses Hawkgirl as an example. As he does, Captain Marvel comes in and sees Superman watching the interview, as Lex explains that the League gave her a second chance, and then uses Captain Marvel's statement to make a point that maybe the League are giving Lex a second chance as well. Superman seems to be shitty whilst watching the interview, as we then go to him fighting some villains in Metropolis. Batman's there helping him, where he mentions that he may have been a bit too hard on the Boy Scout, but Superman says that he thought he was meant to be the Boy Scout. Batman admits that he was until Captain Marvel came around, where Superman questions why everyone likes him, as Batman admits that they all like him because he's sunny. As they beat the villains, Professor Hamilton contacts Superman, saying that he has something that he might want to see, but we then go to Star Labs to see that someone stole the lab's kryptonite. Batman finds out that someone used nanites to break into the safe and that it was LexCorp tech, where Superman says that it's Lex, but Batman doubts it since they did such a sloppy job with breaking in. Batman goes to the Watchtower to see if he can find any further evidence, where Superman asks since when does Batman miss evidence, as he just claps back at him with,
"Since when do you jump to conclusions without evidence?"
Oh damn, he got him good. So Batman tells him to go to the charity event that Lex invited him to, but we then see the charity event unfold as Superman attends. Lex says that he's running the charity event for poverty and help give anyone suffering with poverty a home in his new city. Billy's walking around the event, as Lex then says in front of everyone that this is the greatest day of his life, but Superman questions him, but Lex says he doesn't know a lot of things about him. Lex finishes his speech as Mercy pulls him aside where Superman hears her say that the device has been planted and that an escape route is ready before it goes off. Superman tries to search around for the device, where he ends up finding it under the playground as he tells everyone to run away and leave. Billy transforms as Lex tries to stop Superman from getting to the device, but Captain Marvel comes in to make him stop for a moment. Superman says that he doesn't have X-ray vision, as Lex thanks Captain Marvel for coming in to help, as Superman questions Lex about the device. Lex explains that the device isn't a bomb, but a fusion engine that's covered in lead because it's powered by kryptonite molecules. Superman asks why Lex didn't tell him about it, where Lex admits that he was afraid that he wouldn't believe him, as Captain Marvel suggests that they get someone like the Atom to look at the device instead to see if Lex is telling the truth. Superman says that there's no time left, and as he's about to punch his way down, Captain Marvel comes in to stop him. As he does, the two of them fight where they cause a lot of destruction to the buildings around them. This is probably the one and only time I will be defending Man of Steel because it's not particularly a good movie. But that movie doesn't get away with two superhero beings fighting in a populated city, but this does? To me, it's either that none of them should get a pass, or both of them should get a pass, since you all think that Superman should have pulled Zod up into space. But that's a lot harder to do than you would think it would be, so I'm leaning on the point of them both getting a pass. Even though Lexor City isn't full of people yet, my point still stands because there's still quite a few people at the event. Anywho, the two of them keep on fighting until Superman eventually knocks Captain Marvel down, as they keep on fighting underground. Eventually, Superman gets Captain Marvel to transform back into Billy, as Superman stops the device. The Atom and a few of the League's members look over the device, as the Atom tells Superman that Lex was telling the truth, where Superman apologizes to Lex. Superman says that the League will pay for the damages, but Lex refuses and says that this one's on him as he walks away. We then go to the Watchtower as Captain Marvel called a meeting with the League's original members. Captain Marvel cuts off Superman as he's talking, where he says that he looked up to the League and that Superman was his idol, and that he never had to act the way the villains do just to beat them. He likes being a hero, and he then says that he's quitting the League since they don't act like heroes anymore. As Captain Marvel leaves, Batman says that they set him up, where he questions who, but Batman just says they, as we then see Lex celebrate how everything turned out, since it was all a plan to get in with the press, as we see him give Amanda Waller a drink. Fuck, this ending's so good, but the whole episode's really good for a matter of the fact. I think that Captain Marvel's a great addition to this universe, since he really brought a lot to this episode, especially at the end where he kind of makes the League realize that they're acting the wrong way. He's actually very similar to how Superman used to be back in Superman the Animated Series, where he was more of a light-hearted Boy Scout, and I think that really works in contrast to the Superman we have in the show now. But I'll tell you what's disappointing, Captain Marvel does not show up in another episode after this. They really could have brought him back. Also, you can't not love the reveal that Lex is helping Cadmus out. That shit is fantastic. This is honestly the best episode in this season so far. The episode starts as GL's walking through the Watchtower, where Vixen pulls him into a room, where she says that he's going to take her out for dinner. He ends up agreeing, where he seems a little bit annoyed since it's a bit unprofessional to act romantically in the workplace. We then go to Jean as he talks to some robot, since they need help because they're stuck on some rock made up of the same material as Shiera's mace. Jean sends Shiera to help the robot, as she orders her to bring members with her, where Vixen says that she'll go with her. GL gets a bit shitty since Jean sent his ex and girlfriend on a mission together, where Jean admits that he doesn't consider one's love life when sending people on a mission. We then see that the robot is that Thanagarian woman helping with the construction of their device on Earth. I didn't even know that her name was Parandol because she played such a small part in Starcrossed. Then we see Shiera go on a mission with Vixen and Vigilante. Is that Nathan Fillion? It definitely is. After a little drama on the Javelin, they arrive at their destination where Vixen can't see a mining ship on their planet and that they can't find any Inth metal there at all. Vigilante's sure that they went to the right place, and as they walk into the mine they get shot at by a bunch of laser beams while they run back for the Javelin. It gets destroyed as they're running to it where they have to go and get cover. They end up finding cover as Parandol calls out Shiera because she's shitty that she ruined their plan and that the Thanagarians lost the war because she helped the League destroy the device. Shiera asks what happened to Hall, as Paran explains that when they arrive back at Thanagar, the Gordanians basically took over the planet. Haro tried to fight off their ships, but eventually he sent the rest of his men into another ship as they escaped, where he sacrificed himself by destroying the Gordanian flagship to save them. Kind of a disappointing way to get rid of one of the biggest threats in the Justice League show, but okay. Vixen gets the idea that Shiera still has feelings for him, and oh shit, this is awkward.
You still have feelings for him.
For a lot of people I've let down.
Paran says if they hand Shiera to them, they'll let the other two go free, where Vigilante shoots at them, as they now have to find a way out of their situation. They manage to get away, and I honestly didn't realize that this is Krager in the giant suit, and I'm surprised that he's even functional after what Jean did to him. Anywho, he seems to not remember much as he thinks that Shiera is responsible for what happened to him, where the Thanagarians go searching for the League's members. We then see the League's members split up to try and get some help, but they have a bit of drama since Vigilante can't trust her because she's a Thanagarian. The reason why he doesn't trust her is because he was tortured by Thanagarians, as Shiera says that she's going to hand herself over. Vixen gets annoyed since the other members of the League hype Shiera up as being so tough and never quitting, but she admits that she used to be a little jealous of her, but now she isn't. Vigilante ends up saying that they're in this together, as they fight the Thanagarians again. When they do, they end up beating Krager and a random soldier, but Shiera has to escort Vigilante since he's hurt. As she takes him away, Krager manages to knock Vixen down, but as they're about to shoot her, Vixen says that she can find Shiera for them. She makes the point that she'll be able to help them since they both want the same man, where they end up letting her help find Shiera. As she's going to go find her, she convinces them that she's injured and needs medical assistance, as they then take her to their ship full of medical supplies. When there, she knocks out the Thanagarian soldier that took her there, where she manages to contact Jean and tell him what's going on, but as she does, Paran gets her at gunpoint. We go to Shiera and Vigilante as she goes to hand herself in. As she goes away, Vigilante manages to interrogate a Thanagarian soldier to find out where the ship is. Then we go to Shiera as she hands herself in to them, where they drop Vixen out of the sky. When they do, Vigilante comes in with the ship and saves her as they fight. Eventually they beat the Thanagarians, and when they get back to the watchtower, GL rushes in to see how they're going, but they both walk off without acknowledging him. They then have a drink together where they laugh about what John does, but after laughing a little bit, Vixen admits that she knows that she still has feelings for her, and asks if she still has feelings for him. She says what's not to love, as Vixen admits that when she starts something, she just wants to see how things go from there, as they say cheers to that. Honestly, just a bit of a boring episode. It's just disappointing coming from the Justice League finale to this, where Shira has to fight Rose side bitches. The only really interesting stuff is the love triangle of GL, Shira, and Vixen, and also how Vixen and Shira conflict with one another in this episode. Besides that, it's just really average, and I ended up actually being bored at some moments, since the villains aren't interesting at all, especially since they aren't really a threat. I like bringing back events from Justice League, but it just isn't done that well here. There's some nice references, but they could have done a lot more with it. Goes above the ties that bind, but below Doubleday. An episode all about the Question. I am keen for this. It starts with some villain on top of a building as he rips a bit off the building, where Superman and Captain Atom come in to stop him. The villain's apparently from Apokolips since Superman mentions it, but they end up sending the villain back to Apokolips after activating his boom tube and stealing it from him before he goes through the portal. Lewis comes up to Superman as they beat the villain, but Captain Atom excuses himself, as Lewis says that he's late, where they then go and fly away. As Captain Atom leaves, the General calls out to him and says that he's back on the Air Force, where he has to decide to stay with the League or go to the Air Force. We go back to Superman and Lewis as they're on top of a bridge to have a picnic, where Lewis says that she's worried about him. She's worried because of the way the League's been acting, especially with what happened between him and Captain Marvel, as she tells Superman that he's starting to talk like Lex. Superman says that he isn't, where Lewis says that he isn't, but he can't serve the public without their confidence because they need people to trust him. They kiss as we then go to the Question and Huntress, as the Question's trying to get information from a computer, whilst Huntress is fighting off some men. Eventually he gets the info he needs, where he thinks that it'll help him find out if Lex is linked to Cadmus, as she wants to go on a real date with the Question. He says that it will take days to get info off the hard drive, where she steals it off him, where he offers to go out for dinner and then to the movies. It's actually pretty funny since he's got to persuade her to get the hard drive back. They go and do that, as we then see that Lex is with Professor Hamilton, as he found out that Lex doesn't have the disease anymore, and even saw that there was no trace of the cancer ever being there. He then tells Lex that he has a body of a 20-year-old, but they try to theorize what caused this, but they don't have a definitive answer. Hamilton's gonna go look into it, as Amanda walks in and tells Lex that the Question and Huntress stole files from a Cadmus facility, but they aren't sure what information they stole. She thinks that everything's potentially gone, as we then go to the Question as he's trying to get into the files. He manages to get in and finds out that everything's connected, and that the stuff that happened in a better world is potentially inevitable. Huntress comes in as she wonders what he's been up to for days, where he then runs off as Huntress sees the clip of Superman killing Lex at the White House. Fuck, I love how this is building up. It is excellent. So after she sees the video, we go back to the Watchtower as the Question arrives and mentions the White House incident to Superman, where he pulls him into the conference room. Superman questions him about what he said, as he asks what the Question knows, where he explains what they said about the Justice Lords coming here to get rid of the world of crime, like what they did in their own world. He basically knows everything, where Superman gets a little shitty and mentions that no one can know about this. The Question then asks if he'll incinerate him if he does, where he also mentions that he tried to lobotomize Doomsday recently, which was something you actually would have noticed in my clips I showed of the Doomsday Sanction. Anywho, he keeps on going after Superman says that it isn't the same, and constantly tries to reassure him that what he saw will never happen, where he thinks it's all inevitable. It's just one of those scenes in the show that you really need to sit down and watch and really see how good it is. It is brilliant. As the Question walks away, we go to LexCorp as the Question confronts Lex in his office. Lex knows that he took the information about him, but the Question mentions the polls and that looks like he's going to be president like what happened in the other world. The Question then gives a fantastic speech about the existence of everything and the fate of everything, where he admits that he has to kill Lex to save the world. He says that he will do it because the Justice League's reputation and Superman's legacy won't be affected, and as he's about to kill Lex, he kicks the Question across the room. Lex mentions that he's going to be more than a president, where he keeps kicking the shit out of the Question, and mentions that he did the presidential campaign just to piss off Superman. That is petty as fuck, but I love it. That's such a Lex thing to do. We then see glimpses of one of Amanda's simulations where Lex kills the Flash and Superman causes the world's destruction as the Question's being tortured, where he's being asked what he knows but he doesn't budge. They keep torturing him as we then see Superman flying around where Jimmy uses his watch to call for his help. When Superman arrives, he's greeted by Huntress as she explains that the Question's been missing for a week. Superman tries to radio him but gets nothing. His signal's apparently still open as they find his communicator in the dump, where Superman knows that he isn't here. He says that they have kept tabs on Cadmus for months and know where they are that they can't do anything, but Huntress ends up persuading him to help her do things off the books, and this is awesome. I love seeing Superman act this way where he breaks some rules when he needs to, It's great, and it also shows that Superman isn't a complete Boy Scout, and I love it. So the two break into Cadmus's labs, where they fight off some guards, and then find Professor Hamilton in the lab. Superman pays him a visit where he asks why he's working for them, where he mentions that he wanted to help them be humanity's last hope against him, because he used to think that Superman was perfect until the events of the Legacy two-parter happened. Superman gets shitty that he stole Kara's DNA because he betrayed their trust, and as Hamilton asks the chick of the egg, Superman leaves. They get to the question as they free him, where they run into Captain Atom, but he's working for the US Air Force. He then tries to stop them from taking the question, and that's just how the episode ends. Holy shit, what a cliffhanger. But this episode is fan-fucking-tastic. Just seeing the events of Cadmus really starting to unfold here is amazing, and of course you need the question to figure out why Cadmus is doing what they're doing. It works so damn well, and really gives a smaller character like the Question a lot to do. I also got to say that this episode is full of amazing moments, especially from the Question himself, where he gives some excellent speeches. There's also quite a bit of foreshadowing in this episode, which I will get to when it comes up, and it honestly just made me so excited to see how well this show foreshadows future episodes. This goes at the top. Alright, this starts off where we left off as Superman has to fight Captain Atom, and he gives Huntress his communicator as she takes the Question out of the building. As Huntress has taken the Question away, she has to fight some men that are stopping her from leaving. She deals with them and then quickly manages to get her way to the roof. When she's up there, she contacts John for emergency pickup, and after a bit of persuasion, he transports them up to the Watchtower. We get back to the fight as Superman manages to knock Captain Atom out, as he then takes him to the Watchtower. Whilst up there, we see Huntress as the Question lets her reveal his true face, but they actually have a nice moment. As they're having their moment, Supergirl walks past and then talks to Superman, as he explains that Cadmus turned Captain Atom against them. He also explains to her that Hamilton turned on them as well, and she wants to go and stop them now, but Superman has to go and do something first. He goes to talk to the Question as he asks what he was up to, where he explains that he was going to kill Lex Luthor before he could. Superman says that's not how they do things, where he questions him about how they do things since his counterpart did the same, and that Cadmus is turning allies against them. Superman reassures the Question that he can shut down Cadmus without killing Lex, as he tells him to carry on, but if he's wrong, it isn't like the end of the world's going to happen. After that, Superman asks John to give him one good reason why not to take Cadmus out, as he says that if he didn't know the answer, he wouldn't bother to ask. Superman's not joking, where John explains that they don't have any evidence against them, as Superman cracks it, where Green Arrow butts in to say that they need to put in more energy into proving it. Superman snaps back at him, but Green Arrow explains that they hijacked him up here against his will and made him join the team, as Batman wanted to keep them honest, but this moment's great.
Do I look like Batman to you?
Actually, you kinda do. Especially when you're all scally like that.
They all keep arguing with one another, until the arguing stops after the Flash says,
Grammy Flash always used to say the trouble with an eye for an eye is that everybody ends up blind.
We then go to Lex as he gets a call from Amanda, where she explains what happened before at their labs. As they're talking, we see Lex planning something, where he manages to override the Watchtower to shoot at the Cadmus facilities. John tries to stop it, but it doesn't work, so as Superman tries to get down to the gun and destroy it, the beam hits him and then destroys Cadmus' headquarters. The explosion causes a massive ripple effect to the city around it as roads and buildings get destroyed, where we go back to Superman being taken into the Watchtower. As he's brought back to the Watchtower, the President rings John where he tries to explain himself, but the President doesn't believe him. The President says that he has his men investigating the blast, and he wants to give them the benefit of the doubt since the League have saved them so many times, but if they're responsible for what happened, the full weight of the US government is going to be on them. Some jail members then go to Earth to go to the wreckage, as we then go to the President as Amanda rings him. It turns out that the facility that the League fired at was actually abandoned, since Amanda found a security breach in Cadmus' systems and relocated everyone in time. Amanda says that this was retaliation from the League because they captured the Question, but she tries to persuade the President to let Cadmus deal with the League, but he says that he's weighing his options. The League's members then arrive at the explosion site as they try to help out as much as possible. They save a bunch of people from their situations, but as one of the men the Flash is helping thanks him, one man comes out mentioning that they shot at them. It causes a massive argument as some people retaliate against them and don't take their help. We then go to Cadmus headquarters as Amanda's waiting for the President to ring, but Amanda's done with waiting, so she decides to get Taya to help destroy the Justice League with the help of many Ultraman clones. Yeah, not as good as the last episode, but this is just a lot of build up to what's going to happen in the next one. It's still pretty damn good and shows what a bad situation the League's been put in, but I think we just need to see where it goes from here. I will say, I'm glad to see the Flash come back into this show, since he's barely been in it at all, and is honestly one of the best characters as the League members go. I'm honestly just curious how this is all going to unfold in the next 2 episodes, since I'm definitely interested after the cliffhanger that this episode's left us on. It goes above Clash but below Question Authority. Panic in the Sky starts as Hamilton's putting some device on Galatea, as they will only do anything if she commands them to. Amanda comes in and tells her it's time, where Taya says goodbye to Hamilton, but we then see the Watchtower turn back on. The Flash manages to contact Jean, where he says that there have been no casualties, but they're all mad at them. As the Flash hangs up, Jean, Superman, and a few other League members see the news report about the explosion, where Superman wants to turn it off. He then calls an emergency meeting with Diana, GL, Shira, and Jean, where Superman asks what they've done. Jean says that they did nothing, as someone took control of the Watchtower and did it, as the person that controlled the Watchtower is responsible for the destruction of Cadmus, not them. They argue for a little, as one woman comes up with the idea to have a gesture of cooperation by getting rid of the gun at the Watchtower until they at least gain their trust back, but that isn't going to be enough. The League's members then announce to everyone else that they're going to hand themselves into the US government because they want to cooperate with their investigation, as Superman says that they're counting on them. The League then tell Batman and the Flash to hand themselves in, as the Flash agrees, but Batman tells them no because they should try and clear their own name instead of standing on the sidelines waiting for someone else to do it for them. Diana says that he has to, but he says that he doesn't have to do anything because he's a part-timer, and then leaves the call. So the League then arrives at the prison, and man, this is honestly the first and last time I will laugh at a joke like this.
Where's Batman?
Running late. The Batmobile? It lost the wheel. The Joker got away.
It's just the way that line's delivered, it's actually really funny. The League then hand themselves in, as we go to Kara talking to Steel about what's going on, but she admits that she's worried about Clark. He tells her not to worry since the League's good at their jobs, and that the main 7 are the best at it, and this whole speech he gives is great. Honestly an overlooked moment in the show, since Steel's surprisingly a good character, and I even liked him back in Superman the Animated Series. As they're talking, they notice a bunch of missiles coming their way, where they end up drilling into the Watchtower and releasing teams of Ultimen to attack the League. Taya arrives as she's controlling the Ultimen, where we then see Batman break into Cadmus' headquarters and confront Amanda Waller. He mentions that the League would have never fired a weapon at their headquarters, but she tries to explain that it would be the League's retaliation for kidnapping the Question, but yet she wasn't there. Batman explains that the League have had her under surveillance for months now, and knew that they evacuated their offices, but she really tries to explain why the League would do it. Batman ends up putting an ace in the hole by mentioning that it was remotely controlled, and only 3 people are smart enough to do that, and 2 of them are already on the Watchtower. She knows that he's insinuating that Lex did it, as she mentions that he gives them off-the-book funding, and that's all he's good for. Batman tells Amanda to look at him more, since he has more of an agenda than just wanting to be president, where Batman leaves. We go to the Watchtower as the League's members are struggling against the Ultimen clones. Steel notices something going on in the reactor room, where he goes to sort it out. As he's going, Captain Atom ends up helping, where we then see Supergirl going to go find him. We see him get his ass kicked by Taya, as Supergirl comes in to try and fight her. She gets thrown around as Kara manages to get to her, by mentioning that she is real and not a clone like her. As they're fighting, Amanda realizes that Lex played her, and that he's managed to do everything at the moment and that he's planning more. Amanda then tells Taya to stop the mission, but she destroys her communication device and keeps kicking Kara's ass. Steel ends up getting her off of Kara, but as the system reboots, Kara beats Taya by using the reactor's power against her. The Watchtower comes back online for a moment and then back off as Taya's nearly dead, but we then see Lex as he's created an Amazo-like body for himself. As he's about to set it up, Batman stops him as he has all the evidence he needs to prove Lex's hand in this plan, and that the real purpose of Cadmus was to give Lex superpowers. He also wanted to ruin Superman's reputation, and as Batman tries to stop Lex, he actually manages to give him a good fight since he seems to be much stronger than Batman since he throws him out the window. Amanda then comes in and melts the android before he uses it, but Lex manages to knock her down. When he does, the original 7 Justice League members come in to stop Lex. As the League goes to stop Lex, he transforms where Brainiac reveals himself in Lex's body. Holy shit, that ending just gets me excited. God, I just love how this Cadmus arc is unfolding. It's honestly so well done where there is more and more information to find out about what Cadmus is up to, and then to eventually find out that Lex was behind it all is awesome. But it also shows that people like Amanda Waller and the Justice League really underestimated Lex in this situation, and it's really starting to show now. Also, seeing Lex transform at the end of this episode is disturbing, but I also can't not hear Mr. Krabs when Lex is in pain, since Clancy Brown does the same voice when in pain for Lex as he does with Mr. Krabs. There's so much going on, but you can still keep up with it, and it all makes sense as the plot events are revealed, and it's honestly amazing. Goes above Flashpoint but below Question Authority. Oh boy, the season finale. Oh wait, it isn't the season finale, is it? Oh, we got that episode next after this, don't we? Anyways, this picks up right where we left off, as Brainiac admits that he had been in Lex for years now, and he has complete control of him. This actually calls back to the episode Ghost in the Machine and Superman the Animated Series, where Brainiac made Lex build him a new body. When he got shot by Brainiac, he actually was shot with a bit of Brainiac where it managed to get inside of him. When inside of Lex, he actually managed to cure Lex's cancer and gave him super strength, where the Flash says it's time for him to go to jail, as Amanda shoots the Brainiac part of his body. He just completely regenerates and blows up the whole floor that they're on, as Superman tries to take on as what some people like to call it, Luthoriac. I guess, yeah, Lex Luthor and Brainiac together. Luthoriac. Makes sense. The League have trouble fighting him as he extended himself into the LexCorp building, which springs out a bunch of tentacles. Eventually the League are all restrained, where Brainiac tries to suck out all the information he needs out of them, but Jean gets out and lets the League out of their restraints. Brainiac then creates a mothership as he starts to destroy Metropolis whilst fighting the League. They manage to destroy the mothership quite easily, where even Batman actually points out that it was too easy whilst investigating the wreckage. Brainiac isn't there as we see them in the sewers, as Lex manages to persuade Brainiac into letting him help, since they could do so much more than what Brainiac was programmed to do. But we go to the League as they can't find him and try to discuss where he may have gone. Amanda's still there. She mentions that they'll go to Cadmus and try and gain the power of the Black Heart, where we then see Brainiac suck up all the alien bugs to create a new form for the Luthoriac. We're even bringing up some of the worst episodes in the show. That's actually pretty neat though. The League are on their way to Cadmus's headquarters, and when they arrive the building blows up, but only for it to transform into a new building. Luthoriac reveals himself as he says that he will get everything he ever wants, where the League then tries to stop him. Luthoriac sends out robots to stop them, and that's a nice little touch. Also, the fact that the different universe Flash is Reverse Flash is another neat touch. The League then destroy the robots, as Luthoriac then hits them all with a beam besides Wonder Woman, and she manages to throw the javelin at the building. It actually manages to destroy the building, but we then see the Flash as Luthoriac makes two soldiers hold him up as he pulls a shotgun out to kill him. I told you there was a bit of foreshadowing going on in Question Authority, because some of the visuals that you see in Amanda Waller's simulations actually show up in this episode. So as Luthoriac's going to pull the trigger and admits that the question is right, the Flash manages to get out and runs away. He ends up running faster than ever where he keeps on hitting Luthoriac, where he manages to fuck his shit up and completely take Brainiac out of Lex. When he does, he ends up disappearing because he went too fast, where Lex says that he did kill him. Superman chokes Lex, and as he's about to laser him, he stops and says that he won't, but wishes that he did and he won't do it. As he puts him down, Jean senses the Flash, as Shara ends up getting a hold of him in the Speed Force, whilst the League all help with pulling him out of the Speed Force. The League gets him out as he says that he can never go that fast again. What can I say? This scene alone is a fucking masterpiece, and it's probably some of the best superhero stuff ever made. It's just such a fantastic payoff to the Cadmus stuff, and it's also just a fantastic scene for the Flash, where he really proves why he's honestly probably the most powerful out of the whole League. Yes, even more powerful than Superman, don't at me. Anywho, Amanda calls off her airstrike as Brainiac's defeated, but we then go to Superman giving a speech where he says that he's guilty. He goes on to say that they're all guilty because they failed to keep Earth's people safe, and that they let their power get to their heads and separate them from the people they're meant to protect. Superman then says that they've dismantled the Watchtower, and that the current members of the League have to act as independent agents. He then says that this is the end, as Green Arrow butts in by saying,
"Says who?"
He then gives a really good speech as everyone claps, because he admits that the world needs a Justice League. He convinces Superman to keep the League going, but there are going to be some changes where Batman basically thanks Green Arrow for what he did. The episode then ends with Lois talking to Clark, as she says that she's going to cut Superman a break for once. What can I honestly say about this episode that no one has? Nothing really, because it's fucking fantastic. It's really just such a satisfying conclusion to so many events throughout this universe, and it does it so damn well. Honestly, better than anyone could ever imagine. It even ends off the season perfectly, even though we have one more episode, but you will see why I said that this is basically the season finale. A big surprise too is that they really subvert your expectations with the League splitting up, and then Green Arrow out of anyone convincing them to keep the League together. I honestly expected them to end this episode in a similar way to Starcrossed, where they're all down the dumps, but no. It surprisingly ends on a high note, even though Luthoriac almost completely destroyed the whole planet. Speaking about Luthoriac, I love that too. Such a cool way to bring back Brainiac in this show by having him transform to Lex and become something stronger than he's ever been, and he really becomes a massive threat to the whole League in this episode. I can only say too much to rave about how amazing this episode is, but to put it simply, it's just a masterpiece. It's honestly, in my opinion, the best moment in any superhero material ever, because it nails absolutely everything it's out to try and do. So you already know this episode's at the top. There's no surprise about that because this episode's a pure 10 out of 10. There's a reason why I said the last episode's the season finale. It's really because this episode has nothing to do with what's just been happening in the previous episodes. It also doesn't even take place in the same time as those. So with that, it starts with someone sneaking their way into a building 65 years from now. Well, I assume that the quote-unquote now is the time JLU takes place. They manage to get into the building as they run into Amanda Waller, where it's revealed that the person that was sneaking in was Terry. We then go to a flashback where Terry cracks it about something to Bruce, as we then go back to Amanda and Terry's conversation. Amanda's been expecting him to come, well she seems to be more friendly than usual being an old woman, where she tells him to put his batarang down, take his coat off, and have some tea with her. Amanda starts pouring tea for the both of them, where Terry says that he doesn't want any because he just wants answers, where Amanda says they'll have to humour her. She goes on a bit of a tangent, but offers tea again, where he slaps it out of her hand and instantly apologises. When he does, we get another flashback as Terry's talking to Dana, and she seems annoyed that Terry doesn't want to take the next step in the relationship just because of her safety, where she really shows that she does want to be with him, but he constantly keeps on saying that he's a curse for her because she won't be safe with him. Dana keeps on saying that she will be there for him when he decides to cut off their relationship because it's the only way to keep her safe. We then go back to Terry and Amanda as they start talking about legacies because the cup he broke was 70 years old. Amanda mentions that the collection's ruined because there's one missing piece, but we go to this version of the Justice League as they're fighting some of Terry's rogues gallery. They manage to stop them, and when they do, Terry tells the members that he's quitting. So this episode seems to go back and forth a lot just to set up how we got to where we are. But Terry mentions that he figured something out since he was the perfect match to be a kidney donor for Bruce, or to clone one of his kidneys for him. But as he mentions how rare it is, we go back to Terry confronting Bruce about him finding out that he has the same DNA as him. Terry starts to crack it because he looked up to Bruce, but he couldn't get what he wanted from Bruce. He then mentions that his dad was a good person even when his parents split up, as he constantly tried to steer Terry in the right direction in life even when he wasn't listening, but also decided to still help provide for them all even though his parents were split up. Bruce wonders what his point is, as Terry says that he never doubted that his dad loved him, which is apparently one thing in a long list of lies from Bruce, where Terry tells him that he found out that he is his dad. Ooh, a controversial move in this episode. And I'll get to my opinions at the end of the episode because I got a lot to say. So Terry wants to know the complete truth, where Bruce says that he does. So Terry says that he was so arrogant because he thought that the world couldn't go on without him, and he had to create a copy of him. Bruce mentions that it could have been someone like him that did it, as Terry really thinks that Bruce did all of this, so Bruce points out that he only met his mother when he was 16. Terry tries to come up with any kind of answer to prove that Bruce would have done it, such as using nanotech to put his DNA into his dad, but Bruce mentions that it's illegal and it has been for over 40 years, where Terry goes for the low blow. So Bruce tells him to believe whatever he wants, but it's a good thing that he's almost a complete clone of him, because the world does need a Batman. Bruce says that it's an honor to be Batman as he's trying to take his pills, but Terry says that it isn't and then walks away as Bruce is trying to get his tablets. We then get a neat transition to Amanda having her tablets, as Terry wonders why he didn't know what Bruce is capable of, where Amanda tells a story. Alright, gotta get ready to not get emotional here because it can make anyone cry. She tells a story where the League were trying to take down the Royal Flush gang that Ace created, but they managed to take them all out besides Ace. When they do, Amanda comes in to warn Batman about Ace's power, since she actually gotten stronger than last time, and it's to the point where she can actually warp reality itself. Amanda mentions that she's going to die in a few days because of an aneurysm, where Amanda says they need to put a stop to her now because if they don't, Ace could kill everyone in range of her powers. Batman says he'll do it with a device Amanda's provided, where he makes his way into the castle she hid herself in. Eventually he gets to where she's sitting in a swing set in the middle of the castle, as she asks if he enjoyed playing with her Royal Flush gang. He says that he can't say he did, but she then starts to get into a backstory about how she was being tested on by the government and that they were training her to be a weapon, but whilst doing that they also stole a childhood from her. Batman admits that he knows what it's like, where Ace knows that he does know how it feels and that he wasn't going to use Amanda's weapon on her, but try to persuade her to fix everything. She then admits that she's dying very soon, but she asks Batman to stay with her since she's scared, and damn man, this is fucking masterful. So Batman sits on the swing set with her, as she then manages to fix what she did just before dying, where Batman takes her to them. This scene is an absolute fucking masterpiece. No wonder why it manages to make the rounds on Twitter once every year or two. It really shows what Batman's all about in one scene, and damn, it's just so fucking sad. Amanda explains that this is the Bruce she knows, and that he's 2 steps ahead of everybody. Terry still thinks that Bruce overrode his DNA, where Amanda admits that she did it because the world really does need a Batman, even though she used to not think that way. She goes on to mention that over the years she actually started to respect Batman and even trust him, which got to the point where Amanda thought that he needed a replacement because Bruce was starting to get older and weaker. She couldn't accept a world without Batman, so she got the tech together to get Bruce's DNA and put it into Terry's father when he thought he was getting a flu shot. It was actually nanotech being injected into his bloodstream, which rewrote his DNA to be a copy of Bruce's, but Terry was born over a year later. Amanda then goes on to say that the DNA is only a part of the story, and to replicate the tragedy of Bruce, she hired Andrea to kill his parents in the parking lot after going to the movies. When she was going to go do it, she couldn't actually go through with it and argued with Amanda about it, but Terry says that his father got murdered anyways. He says that no matter what he did or didn't do, he would be a copy of Bruce, where Amanda admits that the Lord had been good company for her, even though she has a lot to answer for, but she also believes for all the harm she's caused, she also done some good. She uses some Bible passages to try and persuade Terry that he can do good things as well, but then gets to the point where she says that he isn't a clone but he's Bruce's son. Terry does have some similarities to Bruce, but also some differences such as not being as smart as him, but he does have his heart and also cares as deeply about his fellow man as Bruce. Amanda then gives Terry the advice to care about his fellow man, or not because it's his choice, where Terry goes to Wayne Manor. When he's there, he decides to ring Dana at 3 in the morning, where he asks if they're still on for the weekend, where he has plans to propose to her, where she then says that they're still on for the weekend, where he says goodnight to her. Bruce comes in as Terry's sitting in his chair, where he lets him sit down as Bruce is asking where Terry's been. He says that he had some things to take care of, as Bruce says that he was worried about Gotham with Batman not being around, but Terry tells him that he has it covered, as he helps Bruce open his pills. Bruce tells him that Clark called as Terry goes to suit up, but Bruce tells him to eat something as he says that he will when he gets back. Bruce says that he's a stubborn piece of work as Terry says,
"Just like my old man."
This episode actually ends with a nice homage to the first Man-Bat sequence in the episode on Leather Wings, but instead of Man-Bat, it's obviously Batman going around Gotham. This episode's honestly really good, and it's a great conclusion to Batman Beyond. I know, we finally got a conclusion to Batman Beyond 4 years after the show stopped airing, and I really like it a lot. Okay, so before I get into the rest of the episode, what do I think about Terry being a copy of Bruce? I really do like it for how well it works in the narrative of this episode, but I can see why people don't like it. On one hand, you have the clone idea working, because it really suits the narrative of Amanda thinking that the world really needs another Batman, and will go to any length to try and get that. On the other hand though, it kind of ruins the idea that anyone could have ended up becoming the new Batman, like what was set up in the show. I can look past that though and just think that it could be another alternate future, kind of like what we saw in the second part of the Once and Future thing, but I do understand why it would annoy some people. I just think that what I like about it really overweighs what I don't like about the idea, and provides some amazing storytelling potential that this episode really utilizes. It really makes Terry think if he was only put here just to be a copy of Bruce, and really brings up a lot of questions with his existence in life since his DNA was tampered with just to make him into a new Batman. Also with that too, you have without a doubt one of the best scenes in any comic book material, where Batman talks to Ace as she's about to die. It's just so emotional, but also shows how fantastic of a character Batman really is. I would have shown that whole scene start to finish if I could have, but no, copyright's a bitch. Anyways, I could talk about this episode all day, so the episode goes above Question Authority, but below Divided We Fall. If you ask me, this season is definitely better than the first season. You really start to get into the whole Cadmus arc of the show, and to see it unfold through most of the episodes is honestly really great stuff. The first 5 or 6 episodes were pretty similar in regards to how season 1 went, with them either being average or good. I really think that the season starts to get really good when you get into Question Authority, then it manages to really carry the momentum for the rest of the season. I'm honestly just surprised with how well this season ended. It is the strongest ending to a season in any of these DCAU shows, since these episodes were building up to this big climax, and it paid off so well. I really love what the show managed to do with Cadmus, where it turned out that Lex was pulling the strings behind the scenes, and that Brainiac was actually controlling him all along. It was such a huge surprise. There's a reason why most of the clips you see of this show are in this season, is because it's fucking fantastic. With that too, I love all the callbacks to previous events, not only in Justice League, but also shows like Superman the Animated Series and Batman the Animated Series. It's implemented so well where everything they bring from those shows makes perfect sense. The only real problem with this season are some of the filler episodes such as Hunter's Moon and The Ties That Bind. They honestly get quite boring and drag down what could have honestly been an amazing season. It's still good, don't get me wrong, but with how strong this season finished off, I wonder how season 3 will keep the momentum going. So let's start season 3 with... The first episode of season 3 starts with a police chase, as we see that Lex escaped out of prison, where he stole a police van. He seems to be talking to someone in the back as he's escaping, where he accidentally crashes the van and then gets caught at a dead end, where someone pulls him through the wall. They end up taking him into a forest as he takes him to Grodd, where he then shows him the new villain's hideout being the Legion of Doom. We then go to Superman, Shire, and Aztec, looking at where Lex went missing, as Aztec finds out that someone managed to phase Lex through the wall. They then talk about Lex to the officer and Agent Friday, as the officer mentions that Lex just sits in his cell talking to himself since what happened in Divided We Fall. We then go back to Lex as Grodd shows him around the place, as their new group of villains seem to be their version of the Justice League, because it's so hard for the villains to operate on their own now because the League's so big. Lex says that he isn't interested, where Grodd says that he's too beneficial not to be in the group, but Lex says that he's done with it all. Grodd knows that he's probably lying because no one at their level quits, when Lex decides to ask if he really thinks that they have anything to offer him, since he obtained absolute knowledge for a little moment. Grodd says it's a pity that the League destroyed Brainiac and got rid of him out of Lex, and that there aren't many pieces of him left on Earth, besides the one he's holding in his hand. Lex wants it where Grodd says that he needs to do something for him to get it, as we see Brainiac talking to Lex in his mind saying that he needs to do what he asks. Lex says to Grodd that he's in, as we then see one of the old Blackhawks get an alarm where he knows that there's trouble on Black Hawk Island. Damn, I didn't expect the Blackhawks to be here in any shape or form, but here we are. So we then see the League's new hideout being the Metro Tower, where Shia is on monitor duty talking to the Flash about it, as he's looking at fire while she's with ice. I don't know, the Metro Tower just doesn't have the ring to it like the Watchtower does. Shia realizes that he's looking at her, where she asks him why he doesn't just talk to her, but the Flash says that he can't, and I like this line from Shia quite a lot.
I hear she's, Brazilian.
She then says that she will tell her if he's afraid to do so, where he stops her. But as he does, one of the Blackhawks tells them that someone's trying to steal the weapons that they kept on their island. Shia and the Flash go on the mission, as she ends up telling Fire to come with them on the mission as well. As they're going, we see the old man take his old plane to go to the island as well. Speaking about the island, we go there as Lex is breaking in with the guy that helped Lex escape, named the Key, and also another villain named Dr. Polaris. They get into a warehouse as a giant robot attacks them, and as we go to the Javelin with Shia, the Flash, and Fire in it, we see Shia actually help Wally out. But as she does, they get attacked by a giant Hawk robot, where they have to bail out of the Javelin and then fight the robot. The old man that was a Blackhawk comes in to help them, as Fire manages to destroy the robot after the Flash told her to drop him and go stop the robot. The Flash stopped himself from falling to his death, as Shia and Fire find him, where they then talk to the Blackhawk that told him about the break-in on the island. He says that he's coming with them since he knows the island so well, but they then see that the giant robots Lex ran into is destroyed. Speaking about them, the Key sees them making their way to them, and decides to activate robot sharks, a robot octopus, and even the giant tanks from the Savage Time to attack them. The Flash ends up destroying them all after making a giant whirlwind from the ocean, as they run into Lex and the other two. They all start to fight each other as Lex ends up getting to the vault, as the League beat the other two. Lex then holds the old man hostage as he makes the island self-destruct, as they end up leaving with him. When they do, the old man ends up activating Robot Fish to attack them as he gets away, but the villains got what they wanted, so they decided to leave the island. The old man comes back to the League as he manages to stop the self-destruct sequence, where he figures out what the villains stole. We then go to the Legion of Doom as Lex hands Grodd the Spear of Longinus, where Grodd says that it'll look good in his office. Lex cracks it since he sent him to an island to risk his life just for nothing, but Grodd basically says that yeah, that's what he did. Lex then laughs about it, where he asks him to give him the piece of Brainiac, but Grodd says that today was only a test, and that he'll get it after his next mission. We then see Lex see Brainiac talking to him, where he says that he still needs to cooperate, where Lex tells Grodd that he should kill him but he won't today. The episode then ends with the Flash talking to Fire, as we see the old man saluting the statue of the rest of the Blackhawks. Yeah, this episode's solid. Definitely a downgrade from how Season 2 ended, but there's quite a few things I like about it as well. I actually like how Shia tries to help the Flash with making some moves on Fire, but the real standout is Brainiac still being inside of Lex to some capacity. I think it's more that Lex is imagining him, and he so desperately wants to get him back to be a god again, but it's still good stuff. As the rest of the episode goes, it's alright. It's just not that interesting at all, where Lex has to go work for Grodd and steal an artifact from the Black Hawk Island. Another good thing though is seeing the Legion of Doom become a thing in this universe. I just hope that they actually do something with that, since it can definitely be interesting. Oh well, we just gotta see how the rest of the season goes. And let's continue it with... Shadow the Hawk starts as the League of fighting some villains in Gotham, as Batman, GL, Shia and Vixen manage to stop the villains. When they do, the authorities arrive to take them in, where we see some guy named Carter Hall approach Shia, saying that he needs to show us something. Oh, that name sounds like something else, but that's a spoiler. He ends up showing her a Thanagarian blade, where he explains that he found it in Egypt, and it's apparently been there for over 8,000 years. Carter asks for her help to translate the Thanagarian text on the blade, as he asks her to go to Egypt with him. She politely declines as GL says that they'll have to research the blade at Metro Tower, but he asks her out for dinner to discuss the blade, where she ends up saying yes. We see that his shadow doesn't match up with him, as we then go to the Metro Tower, where Batman confirms that the blade's over 8,000 years old. Shia says that she has to go, where she has to get ready for a dinner date, but she runs into GL, where he gets put into an awkward situation, since he hasn't seen her dressed up before. They seem to get a bit flirty with one another, as Batman interrupts them and explains that Carter Hall is actually named Joseph Gardner, but he apparently legally changed his name to what it is now. He goes into further detail about him, where Batman explains that he's an archaeologist at Midway City Museum, and that he had a good reputation until about 5 years ago, when he started to claim that aliens landed in Egypt. Shia starts to say that he must be a lunatic being sarcastic, but Batman explains that there's more. Carter apparently spends a lot of time on the internet on the I Hate Hawkgirl bulletin boards, as Shia is annoyed that those bulletin boards exist in the first place. Batman says that there's 57 of them, but Carter keeps getting banned from them for defending Shia, but she explains that he must be a fan, but Batman says that he's a stalker. Batman shows GL and Hawkgirl clips of where Hawkgirl's helping the League in fights, where Carter seems to be in the crowd of every mission they've been on. Shiera mentions that it isn't their business, but Batman says that it's the League's business. Well, they said that they should have someone helping her, but she ends up saying that she'll deal with it on her own. When she leaves, we get a call back to the last episode of Season 1, where GL mentions that he met his and Shiera's son, that they're supposed to be together because it's their destiny. Batman then says that,
If you really believe that, why are you still with Vixen?
oh shit, get fucking told. So Shiera ends up taking Carter to Egypt after their date last night, as they go to the ruins where he found the blade. He ends up saving her from a trap on the way, but we then see Batman following them from afar as he manages to avoid some traps. As he does, we see something lurking as a shadow, but we go to Shiera and Carter as he reveals himself to be Hawkman and that his real name is Kater Hall. See, I told you I recognized the name Carter Hall because it sounds exactly like Kater Hall. So after he tells her who he is, she says that she has the worst taste in men, whilst Batman can hear their conversation. As he's listening, the shadow figure attacks him, as he then gets thrown off into the abyss, as the figure steals the device. We go back to Kater as he explains that when he touched the device called the Absorbicron, he started to remember everything. He got memories about his life back, where he arrived thousands of years ago with another Thanagarian, but they couldn't get back home and decided to use what they had to help the Egyptian people. They both ruled the land, and they ended up getting poisoned, where the woman was apparently her, but they managed to somehow come back in this day and age. Kater shows Shiera their plane, where Shiera explains that he probably just saw the ship's log and not his own memories, but he tries to make her touch the Absorbicron, but she just throws him away. When she does, two shadow figures attack them, as they manage to get knocked out and dragged into another room. They get tied up where Shiera knows this person as the Shadow Thief, where he mentions that he stalked her for weeks and wanted to steal the Thanagarian artifacts to make big money. He wants them to let him into the last room where most of the valuable materials lie, and as he's about to hurt Shiera, Kater decides to help him. As he's gonna let him in, Batman stops him from doing so as he then goes and fights Shadow Thief. Batman manages to knock him out, but when he does, the doors open as the statues come to life and attack them. Shiera manages to get out of her restraints as she goes to stop Shadow Thief. He ends up digging through the ground to get away as they manage to get out. Kater goes back in for the Absorbicron, but Shiera goes in to stop him as they manage to get out again just before the place falls on them. When they get out, Kater says that he knows the truth, and the apparent truth is that him and Shiera are reincarnations and that he loves her. She says that he can't because he doesn't even know her, but he starts to list off things about her that GL listed off about her in Justice League, where he says it's destiny. She says it isn't, and that it's the Absorbicron, where he says that he's waited thousands of years and he can wait a bit longer. The episode ends with Shiera asking Batman how stupid he thinks she is, as she knows that he planted a tracking device on her. She asks how much he heard as he mentions all the reincarnation stuff, where she then sees the grave of the original Carter and Shiera Hall. Honestly, pretty similar quality to the last episode. I do like how we get to see more of how Shiera and John's relationship is currently going, since he's in such an awkward position between Vixen and her. It's also neat to see him struggle with the fact that he saw his and Shiera's son in the future, and was thinking that it was destiny that they end up together. All the Hawkman stuff's alright, but the twist that Carter was Kater Hall was way too predictable if you know who Hawkman is. I honestly expected him in Starcrossed. They were gonna do that, but they weren't allowed to make Hawkman into a villain. But honestly, this episode is below the first one, just very average. We start this episode with some Godzilla copy, which is actually a mutant turtle attacking some Japanese city, as the Justice League come in to stop it. Supergirl then comes in to help with a new costume, more resembling Superman's, as the mutant turtle gets transformed back into a normal animal. Supergirl's thanking the people, where Stargirl seems to be a bit of an asshole, as she sees some of Supergirl's fans asking for her autograph. GL comes up to her and tells her that they're having a talk about grandstanding, where she says that he should talk to Supergirl about it. One of her fans hears that and decides to kick her, where she then obviously gets annoyed. But they end up flying back to the Metro Tower as Stargirl seems to be a little shitty about Supergirl and how she constantly talks about her cousin. Stripe tells her not to talk behind her back because she has super hearing, but the Javelin then gets pulled into a hole. They end up in some random place as the Javelin crashes, where they seem to be in a different world. When there, they run into some lizard people riding dinosaurs, as Supergirl seems to have lost most of her power. More lizard men come out with pterodactyls, as Stargirl seems to really like seeing Supergirl with her powers, as she has to save her. She ends up doing so, but as a T-Rex comes out, a man named Travis Morgan saves them and introduces himself to the League, as he was expecting them to come. He takes them to his kingdom as they need their help to fight a wizard named Deimos, as he has a bunch of weapons that aren't from where they are, since they seem to be living in medieval times. Deimos is looking for a great stone, as it apparently has some magic power, and speaking about him, we'll see him talk to one of his soldiers as he tells him that the aliens got away. He slaps him as he starts to ask questions about the people, as he draws Supergirl's logo and then gets vaporized, where we see Deimos' military advisors as Silver Banshee and Metallo, as he obviously knows the crest all too well. Thank fuck that Metallo's voiced by Malcolm McDowell again. So Travis takes the League to a friend of his as he's guarding the Great Stone. He mentions that the stone has the power to heal or kill, where he then reveals the stone, which is actually kryptonite, which obviously weakens Supergirl since it's a massive stone. Some woman named Shakara returns, as she warns them that Deimos is coming. He has his full army with him ready to attack, but they have to fight off his army. They manage to take out quite a few of Deimos' men until a giant robot digs a hole for Deimos to make his way to the kryptonite. Stargirl comes in to fight him and she ends up losing when Metallo restrains her. Travis then comes in to fight Deimos while Stargirl's restrained, when Metallo knocks her out. Supergirl comes in to stop Metallo as she says that she's immune to kryptonite, and she manages to destroy one of his arms with Stargirl's staff. Metallo then chases after her, as we then see Travis beat Deimos, where Deimos ends up falling into the abyss. We go back to Supergirl as she manages to fend Metallo off for a little while, until he manages to weaken her from his kryptonite. She then gets a blade and takes the kryptonite out of him, which powers his suit, as Stargirl throws the kryptonite away. We see Travis giving a speech to his people, saying that they've beaten Deimos and that they're now free, but we then go to the League as John's teasing Metallo with a piece of kryptonite. He asks why he wants the kryptonite so much, and as he's about to tell them the information they want, his mind gets fried by someone. Travis comes out and says that the League's taken Metallo with them, but the League then also decide to let Scartaris get the kryptonite, but also seal the portal to their world permanently, so no one can bring the big piece of kryptonite to the normal world. The episode then ends as Supergirl and Stargirl fly away, but they relate to one another about overprotective family members, as GL and Stripe know that something's going on as they take a Metallo with them. This episode isn't bad at all, or even boring, but it's just like the last episode, extremely average. I don't mind how Stargirl and Supergirl end up becoming friends at the end, but I really don't care about it either, since Stargirl's a bit of an asshole at the start. The other two are kind of just there in this episode. Neither GL or Stripe have anything interesting to do, which kind of sucks, especially with GL. Also, Metallo is kind of a waste in this episode, especially after such a cool reveal. He really just ends up fighting Supergirl then losing as she outsmarts him. The only real reason why he's there is because his brain gets fried at the end, where it kind of implies that something big is going on. I hate to say it, but this is now the worst episode of Season 3. To Another Shore starts with rocks falling off a mountain into the ocean right near where a ship is sailing, as they end up landing on the ice to see that some ship is frozen into the mountain. Well, that was the shortest start to an episode yet. So from there we go to the Watchtower. Wait, I thought they decided to get rid of the Watchtower. I guess Superman decided to keep it? But we're on the Watchtower as Green Arrow talks to Diana as she's dressed up professionally to go to a global warming conference. She's going there because her mother told her to go as she wants to patch up their relationship with one another, but she mentions that she doesn't want to go by herself. Diana asks Jean to go, but he can't as he has to manage the League's members' missions, where she says that Mr. Terrific can cover. Jean says no, but Diana tells him to come, since he's been up on the Watchtower almost all the time for the past 2 years, but she mentions that he isn't on the ground helping humanity because he doesn't want to, but she asks if he actually likes them. He says that he doesn't dislike them, but she honestly gives a good speech about how people are different and that they're worth the effort. Anyways, Diana says that she has to go, as she says that they're not done talking about this, but we then see Star Sapphire and Bizarro get into a Legion of Doom meeting. Lex is talking to Grodd as he helped upgrade dozens of their members, as Grodd says that they have a mission for them, but tells a story first. He talks about Prince John in the 10th century on Scandinavia, where he was a skilled warrior who met a Valkyrie. They ended up falling in love where Odin didn't like it, so he decided to banish John from Valhalla, where John pleaded for mercy, begging to be with his love. Odin ended up agreeing, saying that if he died a heroic death, he and his love would be united for all eternity. The thing that he didn't tell John is that he gave him invulnerability to metal, wood, fire, and water, and John soon realized that Odin did this to him because he tried time and time again to die a heroic death, but he couldn't. He ended up becoming distant from humanity and lonely, where he decided to sail north into the unknown. Grodd then gets to the point to mention that the boat in the mountain is John's, and that his body would be on the ship. Grodd wants them to get his corp to find the secret to invulnerability, because they would be unstoppable if they managed to get that secret. We then go to Diana talking to a man as he says that the world hasn't seen any evidence of global warming, but Diana makes the point that they wouldn't have seen the ship in the mountain if it wasn't for global warming. They seem to argue with her as she mentions that Atlantis already pulled themselves away from the World Assembly because of this, and that Themyscira will do the same if it continues to affect them, and would actually consider military action as a last resort, but they're all shocked. Diana leaves as she talks to Agent Friday, where he mentions that if she speaks up to the VP again, his men are ordered to shoot her, but she makes a very good point. As he walks away though, the mountain starts shaking, as Diana does the spin and transforms into Wonder Woman. Nice little Easter egg, and this is surprisingly the first time I've seen this in the show. Anywho, we see the Legion of Doom trying to get to the boat as they fight some men that are shooting at them, where Wonder Woman comes in to stop the villains. She ends up getting poisoned by Devil Ray, as Agent Friday comes in with his men to help her out. Eventually Wonder Woman calls in for support, where she says that she needs Jean's help. Green Arrow then comes in with Jean as Jean finds out why they're here, but he gets hurt when reading Giganta's mind. As he gets hurt, the villains manage to pull the boat out where Green Arrow goes to the submarine that's pulling the boat. Wonder Woman comes in to help as Green Arrow manages to make his way through the sub. As she's trying to get to the boat, Devil Ray comes out and fights her, but she manages to beat him. We then see Jean as he gets Killer Frost to save the mountain from falling and killing all the people at the ski lodge, but Green Arrow manages to release the boat. As he does, he gets surrounded on the boat, where Friday manages to surround their sub with US military subs as the people on board surrender. The League's members get the idea why the villains were after Prince John's corpse, as they decide that they can't leave his body here because other villains would just try and get it. Diana mentions that he deserves to be laid to rest, as they're wondering why the villains' minds seem to short out when they start to give the heroes the answers they need. Jean then mentions that they will have to sort out that mystery on their own, because he thought about what Diana said about Prince John's horrible life. It's because he's a Martian that will live far longer than he did, and unless he finds a way to connect with humanity, he will live out that time alone like him. Jean says that he can't learn that on the Watchtower, where we then go to the other heroes as they give Prince John a memorial in space, where he and his boat go into the sun. We then see the League's heroes say goodbye to Jean as he leaves the Watchtower, and then uses his human disguise to live amongst others. Okay, that ending's cool, but as the whole episode goes, it's just okay. I just really don't find the whole plot of this episode that interesting, but the villains are basically trying to find the secret to immortality. The only part of it I like is the end, where Jean seems to relate to Prince John and his struggles of being alive for so long and losing his humanity whilst also being alone. I'm also interested to see where things go in regards to why the villains get attacked when they're going to confess to the heroes what they're up to. It is quite interesting. Anyways, this episode goes above Shadow of the Hawk, but below I Am Legion. This episode starts as Weather Wizard and some other villains walk into a bar full of villains. When they do, we see a conversation between Mirror Master, the Trickster, and Captain Cold, as Mirror Master mentions that they had to resort to smaller crimes recently. The Trickster, voiced by Mark Hamill, says that they have to visualize, but Captain Cold questions him because if he doesn't get a mortgage payment soon, he'll be packing groceries for a living. Captain Boomerang then joins the conversation, where they seem to be happy that Captain Boomerang managed to get out on parole. They then compare how they were taken down by the Flash after Captain Boomerang mentions the crime that put him in jail in the first place, as they then order some drinks as the waiter comes by. After the waiter leaves, Mirror Master mentions that they'd be living like kings if it wasn't for the Flash, where they then plan to take down the Flash at the opening of his museum. We then go to the Central City Police Department, where we see Wally looking at some evidence, where he figured out a vital piece of info about the crime. Wally then leaves for the day as he goes to the Watchtower, where he asks Batman if he could come to the opening of his museum. Batman asks what time, and I really like this moment where Batman actually cares and wants to be there for Wally, as Orion thinks that Batman's nuts for letting the Flash manipulate him, as Batman looks shitty about that. So we then see Wally rushing through Central City, where he hears someone calling out for help. He finds a girl lost in an abandoned skating rink, but it seems to be a hologram as the Flash gets trapped in there. Mirror Master comes out with some 70s disco music, and I love how the Flash can't come up with a comeback on the fly this time. As he stuffs up the comeback, the disco ball starts shooting out lasers, as the Flash manages to get rid of the music from the jukebox and uses a disc to make the disco ball fall and break, where he leaves since Mirror Master was a hologram as well. We then see Flash at the Flash Appreciation Day, as he gets handed the key to the city from the mayor, where he gives a speech thanking everyone for appreciating him. As he's leaving, a bunch of explosive boomerangs get thrown his way, where he manages to stop them as a plane grabs him and traps him on it, as it's going to crash into a mountain. The Flash manages to stop it as Batman and Orion come in, where they mention that people are out to kill him. Batman mentions that Captain Boomerang and 3 other villains went off the grid and are planning to kill him, where the Flash says that he needs to get changed before the museum opening in an hour. Batman says that they're coming with him, but we see the villains arguing with one another, as the Trickster says that it's his turn and explains his plan, but Captain Cold says that taking turns is dumb. They leave them as the Trickster says it's dumb, as we then see the Flash, Batman, and Orion arrive at his place. The Flash quickly changes into a new suit with one of his rings, where Batman mentions that the Flash needs to take the attempts on his life more seriously, where Wally mentions that he could get them all tomorrow because they all hang out at one small bar. They then decide to go there where everyone in the bar leaves besides the Trickster, as he's ranting about how his plan was so great. Batman stops the Trickster from shooting them, where Batman gets Orion to interrogate him, but the Flash makes him stop and manages to get through to him in honestly a great way that only the Flash could do. He just connects to him as a person, and it's a nice moment, especially after the Flash finds out that they're going to ambush him at the Flash Museum.
See, that's all we needed. All right. Dude, as soon as you finish your drink, turn yourself in.
Got me again, Flash.
We then go to the Flash Museum as he's signing autographs, but the news reporter seems to have the hots for the Flash. Batman and Orion are outside the museum monitoring him, and I love this moment.
Central City builds statues to this fool who concerns himself with pitiful men like the Trickster. I don't understand.
No, you don't.
The news reporter then tells the Flash that they're going to go live in 50 seconds, but when she goes to fix her makeup with her makeup kit, the villains get into the museum with her mirror. Batman and Orion hear them fighting inside as they come in to help, but when they do, the news reporter falls into one of Mirror Master's mirrors, where the Flash goes in to save her. They don't know which way to get out, and as Orion gets taken down and Batman's stuck on the floor, he manages to shoot a flare into one of the mirrors as the Flash finds his way out. They eventually free Orion and beat the villains as the Flash talks to the news reporter where she asks about the museum and tries to make a move on him. He then says that he at least got to go on TV, where Orion starts to understand that the Flash puts on this act to hide his pain. The Flash then says that they took down the bad guys and no one got hurt, where he says that's a really good day. Finally, a good episode in this season. This episode's honestly just really fun, and I'm glad that we got a whole episode all about the Flash, since he's honestly one of the best characters in this universe. Even the villains are alright, but obviously the best out of the four is the Trickster, since he's more interesting and kind of similar to the Joker, but more playful and silly. It does help that Mark Hamill voices them both. I also really like how Batman throughout this whole episode really respects the Flash and what he does. It's honestly some excellent stuff. This is easily the best episode in the season so far. We start this off at some temple as one of the monks, priests, knows that Deadman is there, as he says that his time is done at the temple. Deadman wonders why he's still here since he avenged his death, but his destiny is apparently to avenge the monk's death as the Legion of Doom attack the temple and kill a guard. They make their way in as one of the monks kicks Atomic Skull's ass, and then brings out the other monks as they help fight the Legion of Doom. They fight for a bit where Lex gets Bizarro to deal with them all, and manages to do so quite easily, as they then get to the main monk. Devil Ray ends up shooting the top of the building where the rubble falls on him and kills him, where Deadman tries to save him. He obviously can't since he's a ghost, but to try and help he takes over Rampage and starts to fight them all, where Tala manages to take the spirit out of her. Tala then manages to get the heart of Nanda Parvak, which actually keeps all the monks alive, until Tala takes it where all their souls leave their bodies. They all go into the heart where they end up leaving and taking the heart to Grodd. We now find out that Grodd actually freed her from the mirror, where she says that she owes him everything and is completely devoted to him, and Lex calls Grodd an alpha male.
If you're quite finished demonstrating what an alpha male you are...
Hey yo, Grodd's an alpha? Anyways, Grodd explains that the heart is a kind of power source, as we see Deadman get approached by someone called Ramakrishna. He asks what she wants from him since they're all dead, but she explains that they aren't completely dead, and to bring them back he needs to get the heart. We then go to the Watchtower as Wonder Woman asks Superman and Batman to get something to eat, where Superman says yes, but Batman says that he needs to go back to Gotham. Superman tries to persuade him to go to Metropolis to get some fries at a burger place, but Deadman possesses Superman.
I need your help.
That's pretty thick.
I love that line. So Deadman explains that he isn't actually Superman, where Batman gets the idea that he's a ghost inhabiting his body and knows that it's Deadman. Deadman explains that Batman solved his murder a while back, but he needs his help again, but Batman thought that his exile was done when his murder was avenged. Deadman explains that he didn't know that it didn't work that way either, but explains that the villains busted into Nanda Parvak and stole the heart full of the souls of the monks and killed the master. Batman knew who he was and seemed to be upset about it, where Batman says that they will find him and make sure that justice is done. Wonder Woman then questions Deadman about the magician they saw, where they manage to figure out who broke into the temple, as Wonder Woman gets the idea that these villains might all be teaming up. Mr. Terrific then mentions the one piece of info that Jean was able to get out of Giganta's mind, where they figure out that Grodd put together a full team of supervillains. They wonder how they can find them, but Deadman only knows that they're somewhere in Africa, where they get the idea that they're in Gorilla City. Batman tells Solovar about the villains potentially attacking the city, but he's currently fighting them in the city as they have to go and help them. They arrive as Batman tells Deadman to separate from Superman's body and shut off the shield generator, and I love this moment when Deadman separates from Superman.
You have to eat them with a spoon. What am I doing in Africa?
So Deadman takes over Atomic Skull and shuts off the shields, as Grodd, Tala and Lex arrive, where Tala attacks Deadman as she tries to kill him, but she can't, so she manages to get him to go away. They then get the idea that the League are here, where Lex gets Bizarro to deal with them. So as they're fighting, Deadman takes over Wonder Woman and beats Devil Ray. We then see what Grodd's planning, where he plans to use the heart to mind control the whole planet, but Grodd explains that he's planning more than that. He then says that he's going to completely rewrite human DNA to make them all turn into apes, where we then see the device activate as Batman, Wonder Woman and Superman come in and stop them. Tala makes them teleport away, where Superman manages to stop the device where everyone turns back to normal. Deadman seems upset that all the monks' souls are gone forever, but as Solovar's thanking the League for saving them, Devil Ray tries to kill Wonder Woman, where Deadman takes over Batman and shoots him, where he gets electrocuted to death. Batman cracks it even though Deadman took over his body, where we see Ramakrishna talk to Deadman about how his actions caused another to die. She mentions that he was gifted with the power to be used to balance the scales of karma, but because of his actions the scales are unbalanced. Deadman mentions that the monks' souls are lost forever, where she mentions that they were actually set free when the heart was destroyed, where she shows him the monks coming back to life. The Master comes back to life to tell Deadman that the scale is unbalanced and that his work isn't done. We then go to the Legion of Doom, as Lex figures out that the League reversed the effects of the device, where Grodd says that there's more than one way to peel a banana. When he says next time, Lex interrupts where he says he isn't going to do this for another few weeks and pulls a gun on Grodd. He questions his master plan about turning everyone into apes, where he decides to shoot him and then takes control of the Legion of Doom, where Tala becomes devoted to him. This is another episode that I liked surprisingly more than I thought I would. Deadman's honestly quite an interesting character, and I wish we got more stuff with him. Just the whole idea of a spirit having to avenge someone always has good storytelling potential, and I think that this episode does it well. Even though Grodd's plan is honestly kind of dumb, and actually dumber than what he originally said it was, it isn't really about that. It focuses on what Deadman has to do and how he has to get help from the League to avenge the Master, and that stuff works for me. It isn't amazing or anything, but we do get quite a few good moments in this episode, which definitely helps. This goes above I Am Legion, but below Flash in substance. Patriot Act starts as we see a German scientist test on a man, where we hear that they're trying to make super soldiers for the Führer, as Spy Smasher comes in to stop them. They fight for quite a bit as the place starts to light up on fire. Eventually the place explodes as Spy Smasher takes the super soldier serum with him as he gets on a plane and flies away. Then it's revealed that it was General Eiling looking through files that detailed the events that just unfolded back in 1944. We then go to him out for dinner with Amanda Waller, where he mentions that he's sick of being behind a desk, but she can't do anything about it at the moment since Cadmus isn't doing much at the moment. He mentions that the only mistake they made was trusting Lex, and then mentions that the League is still the biggest threat on the planet. Amanda says that she used to think that as well, but tells him to remember that the US used to say that about the Soviets as well. She then tells him to listen, where she says that she isn't the League's biggest fan, but their intentions are good and that she can work with them. He wonders if she's wrong about them, and also mentions that one side gains as the other loses, since the Justice League gained the Metro Tower, but they're stuck pushing pencils. As Amanda leaves, she says that it's a different world now and that they need to learn to live in it. We then go to the Watchtower as Mr. Terrific calls some heroes to him. Vigilante, Shining Knight, Green Arrow, Stargirl, and Stripe arrive, as Mr. Terrific tells them that they have to fill in for Superman in Metropolis. There seems to be a parade going on where the heroes are on a float, as an officer thanks them for coming out to the parade. Some people complain about Superman not being there, as we then see the General going into Cadmus' headquarters where he tries to get into a room. He doesn't know the code, but he ends up knocking out a guard and makes the officer put in the code. When he does, he makes the Professor open a vault as he steals the superhero serum. This is giving some Omni-Man vibes, and I like it. But when he grabs the serum, the Professor sets off the alarm, but the General decides to use it on himself, where he basically transforms into the Hulk and easily breaks out of the headquarters. We go back to the parade as Vigilante manages to make the crowd enthusiastic about them being there. As they are, the General lands in and starts to destroy everything, whilst the League tries to stop him. They end up fighting for a while, and I like this moment where Vigilante makes the kids help them by making the people leave. It just shows that Vigilante is actually a pretty good hero, because these kids keep getting in the way, but he just makes them do something to help them out, to get them out of their way since they're fighting a threat. As they're fighting, the General explains that he wants to prove to the League that they're not the only superpowered people on the block. Green Arrow asks for backup as Mr. Terrific says that everyone's busy, but might be able to get in some reserves. As the General's beating Striketown, a kid helps by swinging a wrecking ball into him, but he gets knocked out of the machine as Vigilante saves the kid. Stargirl starts to pull the General away from the city, where he manages to throw her down, as Green Arrow gets reinforcements. Probably the least useful ones, being the Crimson Avenger, and Green Arrow's ex-sidekick being Speedy. Green Arrow and Speedy try to do some damage to the General but don't have much luck, as Shining Knight's the only one standing and decides to face the General. He gets his ass handed to him, but he keeps getting back up to try and fight, and as the General's about to kill Shining Knight, the people step in as the Grandma tells him to drop the act. She questions him by saying he thinks that killing Superman would make the world safe, or killing him or even them. She then asks how many of them he has to kill to keep us safe, where he mentions that superpowered beings are the ones that need to die. The kids explain that he is the only superpowered one here, where he stops and then says that they will see that he's right, as he decides to leave. The episode then ends as Shining Knight thanks the old woman, where she says that there's no need to thank her, as the kids around them are acting like Vigilante and Shining Knight. This episode's surprisingly good. I honestly thought an episode all about the C-list Justice League heroes was just going to be boring, but no, I actually enjoy this episode. I really like how the General just kind of goes nuts and decides to give himself superpowers just to try and prove his point to everyone, but he just fails at doing that. Speaking about the General, I really like J.K. Simmons' performance in this episode. He just does such a great job, and I can't stop thinking about Omni-Man when watching this episode again. It's honestly nearly as good as that. I also surprisingly enjoyed Vigilante and Shining Knight a lot in this episode, especially during the big fight where they honestly proved to me why they're useful to the League. I didn't think much of them before, but they really proved their worth here, and I like them a lot more than I used to. It's really because the both of them have a lot of qualities that heroes should have that really make them stand out. So as the episode goes, it's above Dead Reckoning but below Flash in substance. Now this is an episode I'm excited to watch again. I just really hope that it holds up. So this starts with Lex looking at a piece of Brainiac, where he ends up experimenting on it, as his experiment to bring Brainiac back doesn't work. He figures that Grodd has something to do with it, and oh, he isn't dead? Apparently not, as Lex doesn't get the answers from Grodd, but Tuller suggests to Lex that they should just go into his mind and take it. We then go to a meeting that the Legion is holding, where some of the villains are doubting why they should let Lex be their leader. As they're talking, we go to the Watchtower as the heroes discuss how they can stop the team of villains. They figure out that Dr. Fate could possibly track where Grodd is through the Flash, since he's been mind controlled by him before, which will also tell them where they're all hiding out. Flash hesitantly lets him do the spell, as we see Lex trying to get the answers from Grodd by using his mind control device to get the answers out himself. The League detects it, as Lex and Wally's minds have been swapped with one another, as they try to stop the Flash because Lex's mind is in him now. We then see the Flash being in control of Lex, where we go back to the League trying to stop Lex as he manages to take out many heroes. The League split up to try and find him, as we go back to Wally where he walks into the bathroom to realise that he's actually in Lex's body. He tries to contact the League but with no luck, as Tala and Dr. Polaris come in to see him, where Dr. Polaris asks if they're going to go through with his plan. Wally obviously has to act like he knows what he's doing with the plan, and this moment will never not make me laugh.
What?
You gonna wash your hands?
No, because I'm evil.
We go back to the League as they're trying to stop Lex, as they end up having no luck, but we then go to Wally giving a speech to the Legion, and I honestly love every moment we see Wally trying to act like Lex. It's fantastic. We eventually find out what everyone's part is in Lex's plan, as they're planning to steal Kasnian money because they're switching their currency to euros. Wally then leaves where Tala tells him to go and rest, and I love this line.
That's not restful.
So we go from one funny scene to another, where Lex discovers who the Flash is.
If nothing else, I can at least learn the Flash's secret identity. I have no idea who this is.
We then go back to Wally again, as Tala seems to be a bit enthusiastic about how he's different, and they definitely fucked, didn't they? There is honestly no doubt about it. Wally ends up seeing the communications room where he goes to talk to them, but Dr. Polaris tells him that the plan's ready, but he also hears from a worker that Grodd's ready to talk. So they go to Grodd as he knows that Wally's in control of Lex, where he just plans to watch him get found out by the Legion. We then go back to the Watchtower as GL, Red Tornado and Dr. Fate have Lex in the cafeteria, but they end up losing him where he runs away. Whilst the League are trying to catch up to him, we see Wally as the villains are going to steal the Kasnian money, but they manage to do so by derailing the train and taking all the money. When they do, Lex manages to contact the Legion and tell them that the Flash and his mind have swapped bodies, where the Legion grabs him. As they do, the League sends a team out to his location, where they go to stop the Legion before they take the Flash, but they end up getting away. We go back to the Watchtower as Lex trying to get out of the Watchtower, where he accidentally knocks himself out as Dr. Fate manages to swap their minds back to their bodies. As their minds get swapped, we see the Legion interrogating Lex, where he tries to persuade them that he's actually Lex, as Dr. Polaris says that either way he's going to take control. Dr. Polaris then tries to attack him with pieces of metal, where Lex reverses it to restrain him as he gets free. He then says that when he helps them make their power stronger, he made ways for him to defeat them all if he needed to, where he then walks away. Honestly, this episode is just really fun, and I love it. The best part by far is seeing how Wally tries to act like Lex in this episode. It's honestly hilarious and done extremely well. There really isn't too much of a plot to this episode besides from the League trying to locate the secret group of villains, but it barely focuses on the plot. Instead, it just focuses on what we really want to see, and that's of course Lex and the Flash switching bodies. I don't know what else to say about this episode, but it was just really fun. It goes above Patriot Act, but below Flash in substance. It starts off with a cage match as some crooks are watching, where Roulette's in control of it. Do we really need Roulette to come back in this show? I would honestly say no, but she's here. Anywho, we go to Lex with a piece of Brainiac, as he figures out that there isn't enough of him to bring Brainiac back, where Brainiac in his mind tells him to construct a positronic event chamber. I don't know what that is, but I imagine that you don't either. Lex wonders where he can get the money to do it, as Sonar and Roulette come in where she explains that she's having financial problems. She mentions that Lex has been taking their best fighters for the Legion, and she wonders if she can have a few star attractions for her fights, where the villains will fight against each other. Lex ends up agreeing as they come up with an idea to have an all-girls fight, but she hopes to not get any second-string villains, as Lex asks who mentioned villains. We then go to Gotham as a crook is running from Black Canary. She ends up pushing him over as Huntress is waiting for her. She notices that Black Canary hasn't been as strong as usual, when she asks why she's taking this man down, as he stole someone's wallet. Black Canary ends up leaving whilst Huntress asks if she's okay, but when she leaves, Huntress shoots a tracker on her motorbike. We'll then see Huntress watching over Canary as she gets in her hotel room, as she tells a question about it where he asks why she even cares. Huntress says that she sees something going on, where he doesn't see anything going on at the moment with Canary. She tries to get a little frisky with the question, and it's honestly pretty funny.
So, what are you wearing?
Blue overcoat, fedora.
You really stink at this.
Canary then goes out on her bike as Huntress follows her into Bloodhaven, where Nightwing seems to be watching from afar. Surely Nightwing actually shows up as a character in this episode. Canary ends up parking whilst Huntress watches her go with fire into an elevator, where Huntress ends up following as she tries to blend into the crowd, where she ends up seeing Roulette putting on a fight. We see that fire is being put up against Black Canary, but they both don't seem that happy about being put in there, as they end up fighting. Black Canary ends up winning, and as we see her walk through the car park, Huntress approaches her about the fight. She wonders if she's being blackmailed as Canary attacks her. Huntress ends up beating her as she seems to gain her conscience back, but when she does, Sonar holds Huntress at gunpoint with a few men, where the both of them get thrown into a cell together. Roulette ends up going in to see Fire, as the two of them figure out that Grodd is using mind control tech to make the female heroes fight against each other in cage matches. They also find out that it was through the League's communication links, because Canary gained her conscience back as Huntress accidentally destroyed her earpiece. As Roulette walks out of Fire's cell, she talks to them and says that she will eliminate them because they aren't under her control anymore, but they'll do it in the ring because she wants to make some money from it. We then see Black Canary and Huntress being put into the cage as they have to fight Vixen and Hawkgirl. They obviously end up fighting as they manage to destroy Vixen's earpiece, but the three of them manage to free Hawkgirl from the mind control as well. When they free Hawkgirl, Roulette reveals that she has Wonder Woman under her mind control, where they all have to face off against her. They manage to break one of the walls in the cage as they make a run for the exit, but have to fight some men as Vixen stays back to fight Wonder Woman. Hawkgirl comes back to help, as Huntress and Black Canary get to Sonar and Roulette, where they fight them both. Eventually they manage to beat them both, where they try to find out how to stop the mind control, but we go back to Wonder Woman beating the shit out of Vixen and Hawkgirl. As she's about to slam them both together, the mind control stops where we see Black Canary thank Huntress for helping her. The episode then ends with the two of them deciding to fight each other because they think it'll be fun. This episode's alright. It's not a bad idea to have the members of the Justice League being mind controlled to fight each other, but it's just not that interesting. Especially when you're bringing back a character that already wasn't interesting before, which is obviously Roulette. It just kind of feels like an episode of the show that should have been in the first season or two. Even though it's the female members of the League fighting each other against their will, it just feels so small in scale. Speaking about that, why show Nightwing lurking in the shadows but not have him comment in the episode at all? It's just like the show wanted to tease Nightwing to the viewers and then do nothing with him. Kinda sucks. Anywho, this goes above to another shore, but below I Am Legion. Far From Home starts in what seems to be the 31st century, as we see Brainiac 5 walk into a time-traveling device, where the person he's with thinks that he's nuts to do it because it could mess things up. Brainiac 5 mentions that heroes have travelled into the future before, so it should be fine, but they say that only 2 of the 3 return back to their time. We then go to Metropolis as GL and Supergirl go to stop some villains, where Supergirl manages to absolutely annihilate them. It ended up just being a training drill, as GL tells Green Arrow that she thinks that it's too easy, but they bring out Atomic Skull and some other villains to come out and fight her instead. Yeah, I've never known this massive guy's name. He really doesn't have an important role at all. And I haven't even noticed him before this, to be honest. Anywho, we find out that it's Kara's 21st birthday, as Green Arrow mentioned that she wanted to train instead of going out in the town. He then mentions that she must feel like an outsider, as Superman says that he knows how she feels. But Green Arrow makes a great point.
You came to Earth as a baby, grew up here. Kara spent most of her life on a planet with technology hundreds of years ahead of ours. She's got to feel like she's trapped in the Stone Age.
Green Arrow continues by saying that Superman treats her like another cape, where Superman mentions that he didn't want her to do that, but she decided to do it herself, and that he stood back and let her become her own person. He then tells Superman that she changed her costume to look more like his, where Superman says that he's proud of her, but not to tell her that, where he says that it's a job for Superman. Kara finishes her training where she's expecting GL to give her notes about how she did, but he doesn't have anything to add because there's nothing left to teach her. Green Arrow comes in, but as they do, they get trapped in a ball, and as Superman comes in to save them, they disappear into thin air. They end up in the 31st century where they see Brainiac 5, and Kara tries to attack him because of the name Brainiac, but Green Arrow stops her. Brainiac 5 then explains that he isn't a machine, and that he's actually a hero, and he's not like all the other Brainiacs. They explain that their situation is dire because the Fatal 5 attacked their headquarters, and that they needed anyone from the League's help. I also like this moment where Kara pulls the other two aside to talk about Brainiac 5.
Just because he's seriously cute doesn't mean we should trust a Brainiac.
I'm not getting a bad vibe off the kid.
And apparently neither are you. Seriously cute, huh?
As they're talking, Brainiac 5 and Chuck talk about how Supergirl disappeared off the records in this day, but Chuck wants to tell her the truth, but Brainiac tells him not to. The League then says that they're in, where they end up running into the Fatal 5 as they fight them. Whilst fighting, they end up mind-controlling all of them besides Brainiac 5, where he manages to free Supergirl and Green Arrow before the Fatal 5 escape. They end up having one of the mind-controlling devices, where Brainiac 5 decides to look into it, and as Supergirl goes to get Green Arrow a drink, Green Arrow says that Brainiac's in love with Supergirl. Brainiac obviously says that he isn't, but he ends up admitting that he is, where he asks how he knew it. Green Arrow then says to call him Cupid because he never misses. That's smooth as fuck. So as Supergirl gets back, Green Arrow comes up with an excuse to leave the two alone together, where we then see the Fatal 5 as Tharok wonders why they failed to capture them all. Emerald Emperor says that she got the Green Lantern, and that he will be useful to them, because they're going to go and try to take over the universe. We go back to Brainiac and Supergirl as they figure out that they might be able to track GL by his earpiece, or they figure out that the Fatal Five are headed towards the capital of the United Planets. They obviously make their way over there to try and stop them as they run into their ship. When they do, they see the Fatal Five send mind-controlled members of the Legion of Superheroes, as well as GL to the capital, as Supergirl says that she's going to go and try and stop them from reaching the capital. Brainiac stops her as he says that she never returns from this battle, where Brainiac says that he didn't want it to come to this, but Supergirl's still going down there to stop them. Before she goes, she kisses Brainiac, where they figure out a way to get onto the Fatal Five's mothership. They end up getting in as we see Supergirl take on the mind-controlled heroes, but when she gets knocked down, we see Brainiac 5 and Green Arrow make it to the Fatal Five as they fight. So it cuts back and forth for a bit where we go from Supergirl fighting the heroes to Brainiac 5 and Green Arrow fighting the Fatal Five, where Green Arrow manages to destroy the hub of the mind control device, where the heroes are freed right as GL's about to kill Supergirl. He thinks that she's actually dead, but we then see her get into the Fatal Five's mothership as she punches a hole through Validus, as the rest of the heroes then come in to stop the Fatal Five. The Legion says thanks to the League members and make them honorary members of the Legion, by giving them rings for a moment. When Chuck asks for them back, Supergirl says that she's keeping hers because she's staying in the future. She mentions that history says that Supergirl never returned from the mission, but it's apparently because she tried to stay in the future. We then go to the Watchtower as Steel and Superman try to find clues for where the members went, as Green Arrow and GL get back. Superman asks where Kara is, as GL gives him a box that explains everything, where she thinks that she can really make a big difference in the future, and that she belongs there. Superman actually takes it pretty well, but he wishes that he had said how proud of her he is, and I love how the episode ends.
Now, this boy Kara likes so much, does he have a name?
You know what? For an episode all about the 31st century with the Fatal Five and all that stuff, it's actually better than Justice League vs. the Fatal Five. It's pretty solid actually, but I don't know. I've never really been a fan of the Legion of Superheroes or even the Fatal Five for that matter. I really like how Supergirl develops in this episode, then decides to actually stay in the future instead of coming back at the end of the episode. I do wonder though, how doesn't this affect the time stream? Unless Brainiac 5 was lying. I know the episode says that Supergirl never returns, but they really set up the fact that she ends up dying when facing off against the mind-controlled heroes. So shouldn't it mess up the time stream with her living in a completely different time period? Guess not. So the episode goes above I Am Legion but below Dead Reckoning. Ancient history starts with GL stopping a villain from getting away after stealing some device. Hawkman then comes in to help as they restrain him and knock him out. He leaves as he tells GL to leave her his regards, as Shadow Thief is watching them leave. We then go to Metro Tower as Vixen and Shiera are in the gym, where Vixen says if Shiera wants to take a shot then do it since she doesn't mind. GL then comes in saying that he needs to talk to Shiera about Hawkman since he ran into him again. Shiera thinks that he's actually a bit jealous, where he says that he's just concerned and that all this isn't about them. We then see John at his apartment with Vixen, and she's packing to go to her photo shoot for a week. When she starts to leave, we see Shadow Thief lurking in the shadows. When she gets in the elevator, she notices Shadow Thief going through her luggage where she attacks him. The both of them fight Shadow Thief for a while until he manages to knock GL out and then runs away with him. Vixen then tells Shiera what happened, as they then go to the museum to try and find Hawkman, where they run into Shadow Thief with GL restrained. They end up fighting, but as Shadow Thief is about to kill Vixen, Hawkman comes out to fight as well. After fighting for a while, Shadow Thief manages to knock them all out. When they all wake up, they see the Absorbicron where Shadow Thief forces them to touch it. When they do, they see Katar and Shiera Hole 8,000 years ago, where they basically became Egyptian gods. We see the two talk about having a baby, where Katar says that they can wait, but she really wants to have a baby. Whilst talking, we see a man named Vashari, who looks exactly the same as GL and has the same voice, where he tells them that they had another victory. They also ended up getting 100 horses, where Vashari shows Shiera why they're useful, as we then see them riding the horses and bond with one another. She mentions that she would leave him for Vashari, as she then takes off her helmet and kisses him, where we see one of his main men named Hathset watching them kiss. When Hath tells Katar he can't believe it because he trusted both so much, since Vashari's his best friend and Shiera is of course his lover. Katar ends up seeing it for himself, where he says that he wishes that they were both dead. Not long after, a servant walks in and starts screaming as Katar ends up seeing the two dead on his bed after they drank something. Katar finds out that the drink had poison in it, as Hath poisoned it and did what Katar wished, since he said he wished that they were dead earlier. Katar tells him to leave, where he decides to drink it and die with her. Shiera thinks that Shadow Thief is Hath, where he says that Hawkman actually knows who he is. He explains that he is actually his darkest desires, because when he touched the Absorbicron, his shadow left and became its own entity. Shadow Thief basically gave him everything he wanted, where Shadow Thief tells Katar to kill GL since he's the only thing in his way from being with Shiera. When he's told to do so, he ends up freeing him as they all get out and try to fight Shadow Thief. GL gets injured, where he ends up getting Vixen. Katar ends up beating his shadow as he absorbs him into his body, When he does, he apologizes to Shiera, as he explains that they're both not meant for each other, as much as he hates to say it. We then go to the Watchtower as Shiera and GL talk, whilst we see that Vixen is healing. GL mentions that he hasn't been fair to either of them, but ends up telling Shiera that when he went into the future, he actually met their son, and that's why he's been so awkward around her. He's been trying to figure out what to do with that knowledge, but he won't let Destiny be his puppet, and after Shiera says don't say that you love me, GL tells Shiera that he's staying with Vixen. The episode then ends with Shiera going to talk to Batman about her son. This is actually better than the first episode with Hawkman. I know, I honestly didn't expect it at all, but I enjoyed this episode quite a bit. It's mainly because it focuses on the relationships the characters have with one another, and especially the love triangle between GL, Shiera, and Vixen. That's really the best stuff for this episode, especially with how Hawkman has to learn to accept the fact that Shiera and Hawkman weren't meant to be together. Another thing I really liked is the twist that Shadow Thief is actually Cater's darkest desires. That twist is actually really cool. Anyways, the episode goes above Grudge Match, but below I Am Legion. We start this off at the Legion of Doom, as Tala sees Lex experiment on a piece of Brainiac. He's making everything shake but can't get Brainiac out of the piece. He starts smashing shit and cracking it at Tala, where she then decides to prove that the piece of Brainiac is useless. She uses her magic on it, where she ends up showing Lex that Brainiac's asteroid blew up, where he tries to find out where the asteroid was. We then see villains creating some kind of device that will help Lex find Brainiac. He ends up calling a meeting where he says that they will all end up ruling the universe if he finds Brainiac. Also, they decided to bring back Bud Cort as Toyman for this episode, but not for the Hereafter two-parter? Well, I'm glad, because Bud Cort's Toyman voice is fucking awesome. I love it. Lex then explains that they'll be collecting pieces of Brainiac so he can merge with him again, and when he merges with Brainiac, the villains will be lieutenants of his. The villains then decide that they'll rather take out Lex, as he dares them to after showing them what will happen as he uses Goldface as an example. Lex makes his face smoke when Atomic Skull asks what they're doing. When he asks, the base starts to take off into the air, where he reveals that they're going into space. As they take off into hyperspace, Tala goes to Grodd where she explains that she made a big mistake and wants Grodd to be in charge instead. Tala ends up freeing Grodd and rallying up most of the villains against them, where Grodd tells them to turn the base back to Earth now. Grodd then starts to shoot at Lex as the villains start to fight each other, since some of them are helping Grodd and some of them are helping Lex. After Lex beats Tala, since he brought an amulet that blocks her magic, we get to see Toyman beat Killer Frost by using the power of Yo, after learning it from the Yo-Yo Master himself.
I want to be a yo-yo man, he cried. Make me a yo-yo man. But the yo-yo master did not answer. He just kept on yoing.
Lex and Grodd end up throwing hands at one another, but as Grodd tries to mind control Lex, he manages to reverse the effects back onto him. He then makes Grodd walk into the airlock, where he gets shot out into the depths of space, where Killer Frost ends up freezing all the other villains that were on Grodd's side. Lex likes that she did that, where he tells her to dispose of them. Toyman then tells Lex that they've arrived, where he then knocks out Tala and restrains her because he still needs her. Lex is going to use her to find the pieces of Brainiac, but as he tells Toyman to flip a switch that will make her do it, time freezes as a man named Metron comes out to tell him that time has stopped. He explains that what he does today threatens the entire universe in every time period, where Lex says that he's going to become a god. Metron says that he doesn't know what a god is, or what he's even unleashing, where Lex basically tells him to get lost. Metron leaves as he says that Lex will regret his decision, as Toyman then flips the switch. As the switch is flipped, we get the best line in television history.
Brainiac, I'm coming.
But we then see that it's actually Darkseid, which seems to be enhanced by Brainiac. He then thanks Lex for resurrecting him, but destroys their hideout. When he does, we see a war on Apocalypse as Darkseid comes in and says that the war's over. He then explains that he's going to find the anti-life equation, but he's going to go and kill Superman and destroy Earth first, and then go and destroy New Genesis after that. We then go to Metro Tower as a man tells Superman to see what's going on, as the villains are waiting for them. Lex then says that they have a problem. Okay, yeah, this episode's pretty good. It's really just a lot of build-up to what's going to happen in this last episode, and I think it really works at doing that. I really like how Lex manages to keep control of the villains, even after a massive fight between them all. It really shows how powerful he can actually be against them when he needs to. The twist that he accidentally resurrected Darkseid is also fantastic, since he was expecting Brainiac to come back to him, but nope. Instead he brought back probably the most dangerous villain in this universe. This is the best episode of the season so far, but I feel like the next episode's gonna get even better. The final episode of the show's here, so let's find out how the DC animated universe ends. It starts where we left off as Lex explains how they escaped the explosion, where Sinestro managed to save them, as that person that slapped one woman's ass came in where they stole his boom tube device. Superman says that Lex has some nerve coming back here, where Gigantic comes in and say that Darkseid's coming here to destroy Earth. The League says that they're going to go deal with Darkseid, and thank them for letting them know. As Diana says that the villains are going to go to prison, Mr. Terrific lets them know that they're coming through boom tubes, where we see their armies coming to Earth. Superman still insisted on locking up the villains, but Gigantus says that they will have 2 fights in their hands if they're going to lock them up. Batman ends up persuading Superman to let the villains help them, since they need as many people as possible, when we then get clips of heroes making their way to the fight. We see the heroes and villains taking out hordes of parademons all across the globe, and as Batman, Superman, and Lex beam into Metropolis, we see that the mothership's there. As they start fighting parademons, Darkseid comes up to Superman where he explains that he will absolutely destroy the Earth before he kills Superman. Lex gets thrown off the roof by Darkseid where Batman saves him, as we see Superman and Darkseid fight. As that's going on, the League finds out that Darkseid's using devices to tap into the Earth's magma all across the globe to make the fire pits, where Mr. Terrific tells the League's members to destroy those devices at all costs. We then see Shayera destroy one of them after getting stabbed by a parademon, and after they destroy one, we see the Flash, GL, and Giganta, as GL managed to fling one of the devices into a ship where it blows up. We then go back to Superman and Darkseid fighting, as Batman and Lex come in to help. Darkseid decides to get the parademons on Lex and Batman where they keep on fighting. Whilst that's going on, we go to Wonder Woman fighting at the Great Wall of China, where we see some old man come into the fight, where we see that they're actually Jean. She's obviously happy to see Jean again, as we then see this scene that goes hard as fuck, where Batman manages to avoid Darkseid's Omega Beams. Darkseid then continues to kick Superman's shit in, where he decides to go full Bane on him with a backbreaker. Lex then sees Metron again, where he says that he knew that this was going to happen, but Metron explains that it happened because of his foolish actions. He asks for his help, but the only thing he gets out of him is a possible way to beat Darkseid, but it's too risky. Metron then takes Lex to where he needs to be to defeat Darkseid, whilst Batman and Superman keep on fighting Darkseid. Batman ends up getting knocked down, and oh fuck yeah, this Superman speech is awesome.
That man won't quit as long as he can still draw a breath. None of my teammates will. Me? I've got a different problem. I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. What we have here is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am.
Superman ends up kicking his shit in for a little bit, but as he gets knocked down, Darkseid manages to put a device on Superman that keeps him in constant agony. We then go back to Lex as Metron takes him to a place where he can get the answers he needs, but he has low chances of surviving. As he's going through the place, we see Darkseid mention that he will end his pain where he whips out a kryptonite knife. When he does, Lex comes out saying that they have some unfinished business, but he says that he isn't here to challenge him. Instead, he shows him the anti-life equation, where they disappear into it without a trace of either of them being there. All of Darkseid's men go back to Apokolips, where Batman doubts that Lex is even dead. Diana then says that the villains need to be locked up, where Atomic Skull asks if they don't get any consideration. Batman then says a 5-minute head start, where they end up running away besides Giganta, since she kisses the Flash then leaves. The episode then ends with this shot of the stairs as the League's heroes are going to go stop the villains, and fuck yeah, what an ending. Yeah, this episode kicks ass. There is no doubt about it, this is just a really fucking good episode overall, with Darkseid being such a big threat. I also love how it's a satisfying conclusion to the show, but it also leaves it a bit open-ended since most of the villains are still around besides Lex, Grodd, and Darkseid at the moment. I gotta say, I really do like how Lex ends up sacrificing himself to save the day by giving Darkseid what he wants, which is obviously the anti-life equation. So this episode's obviously the best in the whole season, but you might be surprised where it places out of every episode in the show. Before I get into the show in general, let's summarize Season 3. I've got to be honest here, this season is the weakest out of the 3 seasons. It's not to say that it's bad, because it definitely isn't, but out of the 13 episodes, there's about 4 memorable ones. It's just because the other 2 seasons are so strong, especially Season 2. It's to the point where this season kinda gets forgotten. With that too, the only thing I really remembered about Season 3 is how it ends with the episode Destroyer. As Season 3 goes, it's still good. Obviously, the real standouts here are episodes like Destroyer and Alive, but it's just that half the episodes in this season are honestly average. The worst episodes in this season are honestly just filler, and don't really add anything to the big plot that really unfolds in the last 2 episodes of this show. With that too, I really wish that more happened in regards to Lex's journey with finding the pieces of Brainiac, because that stuff is quite interesting. It would have been cool to see him slowly gain a bit of power from Brainiac, but it could still all go completely wrong when trying to find all the pieces of Brainiac left. With that too, some of the episodes in this season I surprisingly enjoyed more than I thought I would, and that was really evident with Patriot Act and Far From Home. I don't really have much else to say about the season, so let's go ahead and wrap up the whole show. So this is the final show of the DCAU, and okay, overall this show is better than Justice League. Not by much, but this show has higher highs than Justice League. This is just such a fantastic way to finish off this universe with an even bigger roster of heroes and villains in this show, where we got a bunch of different episodes focusing on a bunch of new heroes and villains. It was such a great move to do that, because we got to know a bunch of B and C tier heroes such as Booster Gold, Vigilante, and Shining Knight. The show actually gives us time to get to know the members of this new and improved Justice League, and I think it's excellent. With that though, let's rank every single episode in this show from worst to best, and at the bottom we start with Darkheart, Kid Stuff, The Ties That Bind, Chaos at the Earth's Core, Hunter's Moon, Shadow of the Hawk, To Another Shore, Hawk and Dove, Grudge Match, Ancient History, Initiation, I Am Legion, Double Date, Far From Home, The Cat and the Canary, The Greatest Story Never Told, The Balance, Fearful Symmetry, Dead Reckoning, Ultimatum, This Little Piggy, Patriot Act, The Once and Future Thing Part 1, Weird Western Tales, The Return, The Once and Future Thing Part 2, Time Warped, Task Force X, Wake the Dead, The Great Brain Robbery, Flash and Substance, The Doomsday Sanction, Clash, Alive, Flashpoint, Panic in the Sky, For the Man Who Has Everything, Question Authority, Destroyer, Epilogue, and finally the best episode of Justice League Unlimited is Divided We Fall. The show actually started off not as strong as Justice League with the episode Initiation, but the fact that the second episode of this show is my 5th favourite is nuts. I absolutely love the episode For the Man Who Has Everything, but from there the show really goes up and down. Let's be honest though, the real highlights of this show is how it builds up the events of Cadmus. The whole Cadmus arc is why people remember this show so fondly, and I can see why. It develops so naturally over time, and really gets you interested in what's going on early into the Cadmus arc. So when you get to the end of it where it's revealed that Lex is behind it all and ends up transforming with Brainiac, it's an awesome reveal. With that too, the second last episode of Season 2 where the whole Cadmus arc unfolds is definitely the best episode of the show. It's fucking fantastic from start to finish, especially with how the Flash manages to defeat Lothoriac. Even with that aside, as I mentioned before, I really like how this show actually develops the other members of the Justice League. It's neat to see full episodes of smaller characters being the main characters, such as the Question in the episode Question Authority, where he figures out what Cadmus is doing, is so good. In my eyes, he's really become one of the best characters in the show, because he's so interesting, and manages to hold the stuff he found out about the other world over Superman's head. I could talk about this show all day, but I really think that there's only one appropriate way to finish this video. Am I blue? Am I blue? Ain't these tears in my eyes telling you? Am I blue? You'd be too if each plan that you had done fell through. There was a time I was your only one, but now I'm the sad and lonely one. I'm a fool, I'm the only one. From what I should say. Now she's gone and we're through. Am I blue? Okay, I'm obviously not a singer at all. I can't sing for shit. But I feel like this is the most appropriate way to finish off this video to pay my respects to the DC Animated Universe and also to Kevin Conroy. I just hope that I didn't butcher the song. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. It would also be awesome if you subscribe because I'd love to get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Lastly, please consider supporting my Patreon and channel memberships. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. We get early access to new videos. And you can even get cool things like shoutouts and stuff like that in the bigger tiers. With that, shout out to Victoria Huntley for supporting my Big Boss tier. Anyways, you know what to do if you want to support my channel. Patreon thing on the screen at the moment, or click the little join button next to the subscribe button. With that too, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Anyways, who knows what I'm talking about next? Maybe I'll talk about Spider-Man the Animated Series, maybe X-Men. I might possibly have a poll up at the moment about that, but anyways, I'll see you all in the next video.